There we are, and our audio is there. Okay, so people can hear us and see us.
All right, great.
Okay, so can I get for anyone out there, can you hear me? Can you hear Jason?
I haven't said anything, but I just did. So I'm going to push out uh, the link again and let everybody know we're here.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I'm gonna also do a little bit of socials. Okay, I'm glad I didn't get my Barlow out. Okay, yeah, so everybody, if you can hear us, please give us a thumbs up. Should be able to now. Let's see.
All right.
Thumbs up. Yep, okay, they can. I just unmuted it myself, so. Okay, cool. Nice. So, I'm struggling with focus. There we go. That's good. I'm going to make us a little bit smaller. I feel like we're dominating this and not having room for Jupiter in the frame.
Yeah, give the gas giant some room. Crying out loud.
Yeah, it needs it. Okay, so cool. So they say they can hear you. All good. All right. So everybody, this is Jason Major with me today. It's night-ish for you as well. And we are gonna basically just look at Jupiter and a little bit of Saturn and maybe Mars if it decides to pop up and looks halfway decent. And Jupiter's quite low for me in the sky, meaning off the horizon. It's only about 27 degrees above the horizon right now through my telescope, which is behind me here. And so as it goes on in the evening, it's going to get a lot sharper, and it should get a lot sharper, and we should be able to see more and more details on the planet itself. Um, and yeah, Jason is he's in Rhode Island in the States, and he started a website about what 6, 7 years ago, something like that.
Oh boy, it's actually over 11 years
Is
ago.
it Lights in the Dark is
Yeah,
11
yeah.
years? Oh my goodness.
I started
Okay.
that now. Shame on me. I haven't been keeping it up over the past probably about the past year or so. I've been shifting over to doing a lot of image processing and just putting things on Twitter and Instagram and Flickr and things like that.
Okay.
But that's where I'm doing the bulk of my science outreach and my astronomy uh, evangelism, I guess you can call it.
Sure.
Putting and a lot of it, like I said, a lot of it is image processing. I like to get images in from that are on the public servers, NASA's PDS,
Okay.
some of the Hubble data, and make them beautiful, make them into beautiful color images of planets and moons and galaxies. So that's my thing.
Yeah, so the images that he's talking about, go check out his website, lightsinthedark.com. He takes NASA archival data from the rovers and all of so the Mars rover, he'll take the stuff from there, but also the more interesting stuff for me at least is the probes and all the robots that go around and fly around in around the planets in our solar system and send back image data. So he'll take that data from those and turn it into beautiful images, and he displays those on Flickr and social media, and then lightsinthedark.com, which is kind of where things started off. I read a little bit about that website, and did you take it over or you took a lot of the content originally from somebody who kind of retired from the game, or?
Well, so Bill Dunford had a great website. It was it was a website, and it was a what they had at the time in on Mac operating systems called widgets, and they were basically they could take like a snippet from a website, and he was using it to show pictures every day from the Cassini mission. Mostly Cassini at that time because it was ongoing, but also the Mars rovers and stuff, and just showing something new every day. So I would go to work and open up my computer, and there would be a nice image of the day. And there was a point where he had to stop doing that, and I was thinking to myself, what am I going to do without having these pictures in my on my widget every day to be able to see Saturn or Titan or something from Mars. So I said, I sent him a note, and I said, Bill, what, are you good? If you don't keep doing this, I'd love to start up something like that. And I didn't want to just say, I'm going to copy you without mentioning it to him. So he was just like, yeah, go for it and have fun. But from that point, I basically created a blog.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody was starting blogs back then. So I started a WordPress blog.
Yeah.
And I started doing what he was doing. I never really got the widget thing down pat, but I had fresh content every day on the blog, and I just learned how to do it.
Okay. Yeah. I think it's cool to, see that there's so much data out there that NASA, puts in the public domain for anybody to see, which is cool. It's like, it's not just this, secret government data. Anybody can take these images from these space probes and download it and do stuff with it. So
yeah. And I tried to learn how to process it, I guess, quote unquote, the right way. Try to make fairly natural color images that would look like it would look like if you were flying alongside with the spacecraft. Okay. And that could be a little tricky because they don't necessarily take photographs in the same way that your cell phone does, or their cameras don't work like our eyes do. So you have to fudge it a little bit and learn how each spacecraft's camera system works, and what natural viewing conditions would look like, and then from there, I use my artistic background to make it interesting. Then from there I'd work on contrast and detail and things like that. So,
sure.
And then crop it and make it interesting.
Okay, yeah. So I think the color is one of those things that we're not going to get any color tonight. Unfortunately, I don't use a color camera. I use a monochrome camera, and I use color filters. So right now, what we're seeing is luminance data, and what that means for everybody watching, luminance data is basically clear. It's a filter. It's an unfiltered filter in front of the camera. It's just a clear piece of glass that lets all the wavelengths of light through. The only thing it filters out is a little bit of the infrared, so that and anything above like ultraviolet, that kind of stuff. So this is the visible light that we can see with our human eyes. And what I'll do when I create an image is I will take, for planets, I will take video streams, video captures of, say, for each color channel, maybe 30 to 45 seconds or so, and I will shoot video with red, green, blue, and then luminance, and then I'll combine those in post, just like what Jason does, except for my data comes from my telescope and not from any of the space probes. So it's a lot of the same type of thing, just I'm using a much lower quality data, or rather zoomed out much further.
Corey, what's your the diameter on your scope? You're getting a question here.
Oh yeah, okay, so cool, yeah. So somebody asked, what size telescope I'm using. It is a 12-inch Ritchie-Chrétien reflecting telescope. So it's in millimeters, it's about 288 or so. And there's a mirror at the back. So what happens is the light from the planet comes in the front of the telescope, bounces off a 12-inch mirror in the back, gets reflected from that to a smaller, maybe about a 4-inch mirror in the front, and then reflects back into the camera. So the magnification of the telescope without any help is 2,304 millimeters. So this is the equivalent of using a 2,304 millimeter lens on your camera. And the other thing with this kind of imaging is So the actual camera sensor that I'm using to do these kind of planetary images is very, very, very small. And the smaller the camera sensor that you use, um, basically the more magnification you can get on a per pixel level. So the pixel size of this camera is very small, so that means I get a lot of magnification out of it. It's made specifically for planetary and lunar imaging. So it's basically just a huge lens. The actual telescope itself weighs about 25 kilograms just with the telescope alone, so that's over 50 pounds. Very heavy, pretty big, but it works pretty good for planets and moon. And we can see this, so if you look at Jupiter on the screen, you can see this little black dot right here. That is not, it's interesting to note because that is not cloud detail. That's not a piece of the clouds that's just happens to be really dark. That's actually the shadow of Io, of the moon Io, which is, I think these things are super cool. I mean, you can look at a planet and you can look at all of these things, but when you actually catch events like this, you know, of Io, of one of the moons in front of the planet or behind the planet. In this case, it's in front of it, and it's casting a shadow from our sun, from the same sun that's lighting up our planet. You know, it's casting a shadow onto the planet of Jupiter from one of its moons. And Jason's actually processed quite a bit of data from space probes from different space missions of Io as well. So the most I know about Io is it's like a big sulfur, like, volcano covered moon, you know, like what are some of the interesting stuff that you've learned about it, like, from all the processing that you've done?
Well, first of all, Io is the most volcanically active world in our solar system, even more so than Earth. It's constantly erupting from hundreds of volcanoes, thousands of volcanic vents, really, around its surface. Io is about 100 miles wider than our moon. So it's about the same size, basically, as our moon. But where our moon is geologically dead, Io is incredibly active because of the gravity of Jupiter that's obviously dominating the system there, but also nearby moons, Europa, Callisto. So as Io orbits Jupiter, it's constantly getting squeezed and then released and squeezed and released, but as it passes the orbits of the other moons, and then also Jupiter on the inside. So all of that squeezing creates internal friction, and that drives this volcanic activity. I want to say I remember. I'm just pulling it out of my head, but the surface of Io changes in elevation in places hundreds of miles.
Really? Jeez.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if that's near the equator, or it might just be like, about 100 miles or something like that. But it's something ridiculous where the amount of tectonic shifting that's happening on Io is just intense, and all of that creates this constant volcanic activity and constant resurfacing of the moon from the basaltic and sulfur dioxide lavas that are coming out of these volcanic vents.
So Io is just basically a hot mess.
It is a hot mess.
It's just changing constantly.
I mean, it's squeezing and spitting and making a big old mess. And
it just sounds disgusting, really.
Yeah, right. I mean, it's going to get a little NSFW really quickly. But it's got a lot of activity going on there, and all of that stuff that's coming out of Io. Yes, most of it falls back down onto the surface, but a good part of it does actually go out into space and ends up in orbit around Jupiter, and it creates this, what they call a torus, like an inner tube sized or inner tube shaped donut of material orbiting Jupiter, in which Io orbits, and all of that is like this charged plasma environment just from all of
Jeez.
that stuff.
So unlike some of the other moons in the solar system, Io is not a place that humans would ever really hope of doing anything with.
It would be a really cool place to explore. Just between the danger of the volcanism, the seismic activity, and the intense radiation from Jupiter,
Yeah.
you wouldn't want to hang out there very much. But it would be a super cool place to actually,
Yeah.
see. Yeah, I mean, you got to imagine that. I mean, here's a world where it's unlike most moons in the solar system that are covered in craters of all sizes, all shapes, and splits and cracks and all sorts of things like that. Io has almost no craters. In fact, I don't think there's one named impact crater on Io. Not one on the whole thing. And that's just because it's constantly being resurfaced. So all of that fresh material has got to be like this olive yellow reddish snow almost, that's crusty, and if you could take a deep breath on Io, it would stink. It would be like this rotten egg.
What's the atmosphere like then, other than stinky and full of sulfur? Like, is there any? Do we know? Is there oxygen? Is there? There's
no oxygen. There's nothing that there's no free oxygen you can breathe on Io.
Okay.
And in fact, even the atmosphere is probably more classified as an exosphere, just because of the small amount of atoms that are in a a cubic volume of space. It's not like an atmosphere. Even Mars would have a considerable atmosphere compared to what you have on Io.
Wow. Okay.
So yeah, it's not anything that that would have any sort of atmospheric pressure at all.
It's just not nice. Okay. That's funny. I'm actually gonna do a quick. It's looking horrible, really, for the moment. It'll get better, but while that shadow is still there, I'm gonna do an image capture of about 2 minutes, just in luminance, because sometimes we can bring out quite a bit of detail in post. So we'll see what happens here. But I guess you can't see that. That's no fun. I'll make it so that you can see. I'll make it so that you can see that, because that is kind of interesting to see.
Now, are we going to be able to actually see Io itself?
Maybe. Yes, we will after it exits the planet. We'll see I'll have to see what time that is again. It's cleaning up a little bit. We might be able to see it as a bright spot after a little bit, if it cleans up for us. That's the only issue. So Io, the shadow is right here where the mouse cursor is. And then Io itself is somewhere around here, if I remember right. And usually when we see the planets or the moons like that, it's they're just like this little spot. But with the seeing as it is right now, right, as low as Jupiter is, it might be a pipe dream. We'll see. I hope. Okay, yeah. So, oh yes, and I need to figure out. So again, the same lady, she joined us the last time I did a live stream from Long Island. So she was all excited to watch. She was here last time. We've had people from around the globe actually watching this, which is cool. I love it when I get people from Italy, and it's like, because I know how long they've been stuck in their houses, in Italy and Spain. It's just like, oh my goodness, like I feel lucky for being where I'm at, Okay, our image capture just completed now.
So those 4 dots, and again, I'm going to ask these kinds of questions.
No, do it. Yeah.
I'm not an observational astronomer by any means. So those 4 dots are what for the imaging?
Okay, so what those 4 dots are, I'll show you. I'll actually exaggerate the issue here. So you see the planets now, it's not centered in the frame. What those 4 dots is, it's called an auto-align feature. It'll put on the camera sensor, it'll take the image that it's getting and it'll put it in the middle of the frame, no matter where it is. as long as it's somewhere in the image on the sensor of the camera. And so what that does is every time that I take a video capture to process later, it will make it a lot easier to process because the planet will be in the exact same spot all the time. So it won't have to align it in post. It's already aligned. So I can use this auto align feature of the software, the video capture software, to actually keep the planet in the center of the frame all the time. So
Wow, that's great.
yeah, it's super cool feature, and then so I usually turn it off because I like to see it drift sometimes. But that also shows, like, if you have perfect polar alignment on your telescope, meaning if it's aligned with the rotation, the exact rotation point of Earth in regards to the sky, if you have that perfect on your telescope, you really don't get those issues. But with planets, they do wander. They're not like stars. They don't stay
Hey, that's what
semi-static.
planet means, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So they move around a little bit more. But see, we're starting to get a little more detail. It seems to be settling a little bit. So it's possible to see the shadows starting to move away. I'm going to adjust the focus. I've got a motorized focuser on this telescope that helps, so I don't have to touch it when I focus. Yeah, it's popping in and out here and there. Man, the other night we had some amazing atmospheric conditions. It was so perfect. It was amazingly good. So I'm hoping we get a little bit of a repeat from that.
And that's not the red spot that we're seeing.
No, the red spot is not visible
Okay.
right now, unfortunately. So we won't be able to see any of that tonight. But yeah, it's just the cloud bands. On this, let's see, the orientation is north. North is left. So if the red spot was on it, it would be in the bottom cloud band here and the south equatorial band there. How does that, so, they name the cloud bands. I don't know how much you know about that from everything you've done, but with the colors and everything, obviously no human has been there, but, it's like when you see the colors of Jupiter, is it, from what I've seen, it's quite muted, and you see the two bands, but you don't really see much else with your eye through the eyepiece. It's just those two bands, and then you'll see the red spot, which is more of a salmon color most of the time. But yeah, like with the image data that you've processed from everything, how hard is it to get that natural color?
Well, so what I do is I will actually look for other people's work who have gone deeper into the color gamut of Jupiter. Okay. I'm thinking of, Kevin Gill's been doing some great work. Emily Lakdawala over at the Planetary Society has done some great work. Bjorn Johnson, I think it's Johnson, has done some fantastic color calibration work. And what they're doing is they're taking spacecraft data and they're bringing down the color channels to match visible gamuts. They're doing it numerically, whereas I kind of eyeball stuff. I've got an art background and a graphic design background, so I'm using the abilities of Photoshop and the curves and histograms and stuff. But they're doing it on more of a numerical level that gets closer to what they're looking for. And the trick is, there are three things. There's the color channels that whatever spacecraft imaging system takes its data in. Mm-hmm. Okay, and it's not always dead center red, green, and blue. Some of them will use orange, violet. I'm thinking of Galileo, or Voyager. It would use violet, orange, and blue.
Oh, wow.
And that's what its color channels were. So then you got to, whatever you get from there, you got to work from. Now there are ways to do it. You can adjust the data first, and then numerically, and then have your output. Yeah, I put everything together and I work from that point. So I kind of work backwards a little bit. Okay. But and then you're also looking at what the ambient light would be at Jupiter, which is, Jupiter. The light at Jupiter is considerably lower than the light here at Earth. So you're going to have a little bit of a different luminosity to all the colors. So that's going to affect it. So it's really tricky to get to that natural real color. This is what you would see if you were there right now.
Yeah.
But you can get close. And the coloration of Jupiter is kind of yellowish.
Okay. You mentioned violet. Is that instead of blue? It uses a violet?
So
like, you have to map it to, visible normal colors.
Yeah. So Voyager's color channels were captured, and I know it was orange. I know they did violet.
Okay.
It was orange, green, and violet. Might have been orange, green, and violet.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah. Instead of red, green, and blue.
Okay.
They were doing orange, green, and violet.
Okay, so you have to kind of shift the hue of the orange to a more reddish, and then shift the hue of the violet to a more blue.
And if you just put together the data that you get, if you find the data of a specific imaging observation set and you just put it together, it's not going to be the right coloration.
Yeah.
It's okay for what they were doing, because they may have actually wanted to get deeper into the violets for whatever reason, because they are trying to look that much further into the cloud system, for example, or something like that.
Yeah.
But it's not going to be true color. It's not going to be correct. So that has to be worked from there.
Daniel Porter says, "Hey, NASA Juno is somewhere up there." Is that
NASA Juno? Sure is up there. Yeah.
Is it still? What's the Juno project? I don't know much about the Juno project.
So the Juno project is basically a dedicated mission around Jupiter.
Okay.
And the focus there, unlike Galileo in the 90s and early 2000s, that studied Jupiter and its moons, Juno is really just focused on Jupiter itself, and it orbits in a really elongated polar orbit. So it's going far up from the poles, far out, and then coming in for these close passes, really close over the cloud tops of Jupiter before whipping back out on these big polar loops.
Oh wow!
So it allows us to get a really nice view of the south and north poles of Jupiter. Basically, hasn't been done since.
Right.
I don't think some of these views, because of illumination, have ever been done.
Okay.
And they're able to see what the what Jupiter's poles look like, which is completely different than the equatorial.
It's those little swirls, those little tiny swirls, like dots all over the place, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's a funny color. Most of
it's like
the
bluish,
equatorial, right? Yeah, it's blue. It's blue and green.
Wow.
It's blue and green, which was really a surprise to see all of that color variation around Jupiter's poles.
Yeah.
So that's what Juno is doing, and I think right now it completed its 26th or 27th science pass.
Okay.
So it's basically going until systems don't check out anymore because of the radiation environment. So if we're lucky, we'll get an extended mission and it'll be able to keep going. They'll have to see how well it's doing after another few passes.
How many passes do you know how many passes are planned?
I want to say it was somewhere in the 30s.
Oh wow! Okay, cool.
30, 32 passes or something like that before the prime mission is over.
Okay.
And right now it was supposed to be in tighter passes, but because of some propulsion system problems, it wasn't able to do that. So right now it's in 53-day long orbits.
Oh wow! Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So every 53 days we get this, or is it no? So 53 days orbit. So it's all. So like say every 26 days or so, do we get it closest it's going to get, or does it only get one close pass within that?
Basically,
every stuff.
month and a half.
Yeah.
Every month and a half, we get another what they call a perijove, and that's the science pass where it's it goes close by over Jupiter's cloud tops there. I forget how many tens of thousands of miles it is, and then it goes back out into that wide polar orbit.
Okay.
So and Juno is one of the interesting things about Juno is it's solar powered. So it has these three enormous solar panels to be able to generate power that far out from the sun. It's the furthest out solar powered spacecraft that we've sent.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So it can supposedly go forever as long as it doesn't. The batteries can still recharge.
Well, the trick is in Jupiter is the radiation environment. So all of Juno's mechanical guts
Mm-hmm.
and computer systems are inside a really thick, basically a shielded box on the inside of it. It's got like a couple inches thick of just shielding that protect all of its sensitive electronics. But
Oh
even
wow.
that, after a
Okay.
while, are going to fry out. It's that harsh to get into
Wow.
Jupiter.
Okay.
Now, because it's in such a wide orbit, the 53-day long orbits instead of the the half long orbits that it was supposed to be in,
Mm-hmm.
it may last a little longer because it's not in that environment as close as it would have been otherwise.
Okay. Okay. Gotcha. No, that's cool because I've seen a few of those Juno Cam images,
Mhm.
and they're just incredible. Like they're
Oh yeah,
so
Juno Cam Juno almost didn't have a camera.
what?
It was almost, yeah. I mean, it was Juno Cam was put on as, okay, well, we need to have a camera because that's valuable. It is a citizen science project, basically.
Okay.
So a lot of almost all of the images that are being worked on from Juno, it started as a citizen science thing. Amateurs like me were processing some of these first images, and even now, the best images that you can see from Juno of Jupiter
Mm-hmm.
Are amateur processed.
Okay. Is that like from you and Kevin and other people who process the data?
Well, Kevin's been working on them, and I kind of backed off from them because I don't know how to write the processing scripts well enough as the people who are doing amazing work.
Yeah.
So I said, "Oh, you guys can play with it, and I'll focus on some other data that I know how to deal with." Yeah. So Sean Doran and Gerald Eichstadt are
Okay.
doing some really fantastic work.
Okay.
And there's actually a whole website on the JunoCam website has a bunch of submissions, and people all around the world are processing the data as it comes in and posting their stuff. And every now and then, NASA will share some of that. So yeah, a
Okay.
lot of it is just amateur processing.
That's
We're
crazy.
learning as we go, and a
Well,
few people have stepped up and said, we're really good at this, and
yeah.
NASA has recognized them.
Yeah, that's cool though. I mean, it's just putting the data out there makes it awesome, but actually it not just saying like, "Oh, hey everybody, check out this cool data," but NASA's actually starting to use the
Mhm.
the people in the private area, just like hey, you can download it and play with it, just like you can with like a Hubble data and a lot of the other
Right.
space telescope data. Um, Somebody says hello from Catalonia, so there we go. We got this
Catalonia.
Spain, from Northeast Pennsylvania. Oh, and there's Stuart Foreman. Do you remember Stuart from back in the day? Do you ever talk to him anymore? Remember the virtual star parties we used to have with Fraser Kane?
Yes.
Yeah, so Stuart was on that whole group of us as well that did those.
Back in the day.
Yeah, back when it first started, we were like the first guys to put telescopes out there on a big basis, and Fraser kind of pulled us together with that.
Back in the day, yeah. Well, I mean, the weekly space hangout and all
Yeah.
that stuff. I was writing for Universe Today for 2-3 years.
Okay.
And then when he started doing the weekly space hangouts and everything, and
Yeah. No,
I got Dave Dickinson involved with Universe Today, and he's been doing a fantastic job over there.
Yeah, no, he's been doing great. He's joined me a couple times on these
Mhm.
on these streams. But Stuart Foreman's watching now. He just says hi. He's over in California, and he's probably I ask him if he's working or not. He's a doctor in California, so he's dealing with all this
Oh my
COVID-19
goodness!
stuff. Um,
Thank you, Stuart.
Yeah, no, he's been cool. He was actually on. We were live streaming Venus like last week sometime, I think. And so my neighborhood does the same kind of thing everybody's doing throughout the world, where they're thanking all the healthcare workers. And at like a certain time of day, everybody gets out on their balconies and yells and hollers, and here they're using vuvuzelas, and they're like, all these crazy noises. And we actually heard that on the stream. We had all these people yelling and vuvuzelas and stuff, and my neighbors right next door were just like blowing this vuvuzela the whole time. It was funny. So like they basically got through this stream, they actually got a global shout out. So it was cool. It was nice to be able to have Stuart hear that from in person. It looks like the atmosphere is starting to really
calm down a little bit. Now I see you have a little a chart up there at the top. Is that a live updating position of Jupiter's moons?
It is. That's the ephemeris data that's built into this software. It actually shows the diameter of Jupiter, the visual magnitude and brightness, minus 2.3. And then it'll also show, so the CM, you probably know what those are, but I don't remember exactly what they are. The CM 1, 2, and 3, is that rotations, or what does that say where it is in its rotation? I don't remember. And then the software actually does calculation of focal length. So using the ephemeris data, which is the data that tells that we know of, that tells us where the moons are going to be, tells us where the great red spot's going to be, and those kind of things. It actually does a quick math to figure out what the focal length of your telescope is based on what it expects Jupiter's size to be, which is, it's telling me right now it's right around 2,300 millimeters, which is cool. So it's like verifying what what I've said through software, through math. But yeah. So right now it kind of shows, if you can, I don't know, it's real small, but up here on the top you can see Io is just right in smack in the middle, somewhere. Unfortunately, it's not quite good enough for us to see it on the image, but it will most likely be visible after an image stack is done. I'm adjusting focus as we go because it changes throughout the evening. And I need to figure out how to pronounce, what do you think her name is? Is it Rhine, or is it like a different spelling of like Renee or something? I don't know how to say this name in Long Island. She asks on the comments if I'm going to do the RGBL imaging tonight. The answer is yes, I am, eventually, once it calms down. The whole point of this feed is really more to show Jupiter more than image Jupiter. But
Renee. It's Renee.
Renee. Okay, cool. Renee. Okay, so yes.
She's tricking you.
Thank you. I hate butchering names, but it's just like when there's always so many different spellings. So yeah, I am gonna do some RGBL imaging just once things get a little bit higher and calm down and above my roof and everything. So yeah, what I'll do is I've got scripts, and then the software helps here, where it will automatically change filters from red, green, blue, and then into luminance, and with a filter wheel. And so basically I just kind of hit the go button and it does its thing, and it will automatically do that procedure for me, save those files on the computer so that I can go back and process them during the sunshine hours. So
it has a physical filter wheel?
It does, yes. So a friend of mine in Canada, actually, I never had a filter wheel. It was a wheel, but it wasn't motorized. So it's basically just a little, you know what it looks like? It looks kind of like a Tommy gun. So you've got the camera, but then you've got this big circle, and it just spins slowly and moves whatever filter that you tell it to in front of the camera with a motorized wheel. And it's super nice because, like, I can focus, I can move the filters, I can do everything without touching the telescope now, which is which is great, especially for planetary. Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to tap the telescope. That's just a light. That's just a light tap of my finger on the telescope, and it's going to take a while for that to calm down. So the thing is, trying to focus the telescope when when you have to touch the telescope is so difficult. So like, I don't know. I swear this motorized focuser is the best piece of gear aside from the telescope and the camera that I've really ever used. And a company in Italy actually sent it to me a while ago. A company called Prima Luce Lab, and they make really nice telescope equipment for basically anything. It's a lot of aftermarket stuff, so it'll work with almost any telescope. And this particular autofocuser is really nice. It's called the Sesto Senso, but yeah, it's really getting quite nice. I think this is cool. Geez, when we did the GRS the other night, it was beautiful. You could really see it. It's interesting. You could see it in the blue. When we were looking through the blue filter, we could see that red spot like just pop. It was incredible. Which makes me think, let's change color filters.
It's funny because I asked about the filter wheel because the spacecraft have the same thing.
Yeah, I'm sure they do. Yeah.
They have their, Cassini had a filter wheel on its cameras, on its wide angle and its narrow angle cameras. So, that would people have asked me when I say that images were taken in filters, and they were like, what do you mean a filter?
Yeah.
And then I'd say, like, sometimes there was a clear filter. And they're like, well, there's no such thing as a clear filter. I'm like, well, yeah, it's a filter that doesn't have any specific wavelengths.
Yeah. Well, the reason, so people might ask, like, why the hell do you use a clear filter? Well, the reason is, as soon as you put any piece of glass in the optical train of any camera system, it actually changes the focus point of the camera. So if you put even say you put a red filter in front and then you take that filter away, well, it's all of a sudden going to be out of focus. So the reason they put a clear filter in front, it isn't really to filter out anything unless they're narrowing it and trying to keep the ultraviolet away and the infrared away, which is what they do with a lot of the luminance filters, I think. I need to look at the graphs that show that, but I'm pretty sure there's a spike in the visual range and everything else is blocked out because ultraviolet and infrared can really muddy up a lot of the visual image for whatever reason. I suppose that's a physics question. But yeah, they have to put that clear filter in also, and it has to be what's called parfocal, which means that the focus point of each piece of glass is matched, so that if you change that piece of glass, like from a red to a green pass, then the focus point is exactly the same as it was before. So otherwise, I mean, every time you change it, you have to change focus, which is just, it causes problems. So, so this is green.
Of course, in space, everything's moving, so you don't want to have another process.
Yeah, and no one can hear you scream at the same time. Every time. Sometimes I wonder. Let's see. Oh, Renee says. Oh, okay, cool.
She's asking about her Canon.
Yeah, she's got a modded 450D. Not tried it with Planet yet. So when I first started out, so Renee in Long Island is asking about her Canon 450D for astrophotography for planets. I actually started out doing planetary work in 2012 with my Dobsonian and a DSLR. So yes, they can work. They're not as good as a planetary camera, just because the pixels are quite a bit bigger. That's the main thing, and they're not made with that single purpose. And for planets, it's better to use a monochrome camera like this, just because you can get more resolution. There's no Bayer filter in front of the sensor. But the thing is, the answer is yes, you'll be able to do planetary imaging. You'll just have to use Barlow lenses. in front of it to make sure that you get a lot of magnification. But you can do it. I did quite a bit of what I thought was good at the time, planetary imaging with my 550D, actually DSLR, way back in the day. So you got to try it for sure. The fact that it's modded might not make a difference. Things might just be a little bit more red. And what she's saying is she's got a modded camera, and so the astronomy terms, what that means is they take the infrared filter off. So all consumer DSLR cameras have a infrared block filter over it, because like I said before, if you have infrared or ultraviolet, it actually muddies up the image. And so what they do on all the consumer cameras is they actually install a pretty hard infrared block, which takes away the hydrogen alpha and the infrared that's close to the visual spectrum, takes it away, which is what we want to see in space, because a lot of the nebula have, you know, all their detail in that hydrogen alpha frequency. And so what a modded DSLR is they take the filter completely off, and some people leave that filter off and they put a clear filter on, which is a full spectrum camera then. But the more common thing to do is to take that off and replace it with another filter that allows that hydrogen alpha band through, so that you can use it for nebula imaging and stuff. So you can basically modify a cheap camera body, and so that it can pick up all that astronomical nice nebula stuff, the red stuff that everybody likes to see, like in the Orion Nebula, all that red and pink and all of that. That's in the hydrogen alpha. That's not very visible in a normal off-the-shelf DSLR, or I shouldn't say DSLR anymore, DSLM, the mirrorless, any sort of off-the-shelf, you know, prosumer style camera that you can change lenses with. So
does it become useless for terrestrial photography?
It doesn't, because they also, so the companies that sell the filters, the infrared pass filters for astronomy use, they also sell a little filter that you can put in front of it inside some of the cameras that will actually then re-block that so you can use it for terrestrial normal photography. But you can also just basically adjust the white balance, so everything will just kind of have a little bit of a more reddish hue, which you can fix in post. But the thing is, for a couple of $100, you can pick up like her Canon 450D. That camera, that's not new by any means. I mean, that's an old camera body. That thing is probably, I had a 550D and I had a 350D before that I modded myself, you know, way back in the day. That was my first astronomy camera, was a 350D, a Canon 350D that I actually took apart painstakingly and took the filter off myself and replaced it. And that camera, geez, that's probably 10-15 years old even. So I mean, but they're still good. The thing is, they're still good cameras, and you can pick them up for a couple $100 or less for that camera body. So it's really like, you know, if you can afford to pick up an old used camera body, it'll be perfect for a lot of the imaging that people will do. Not necessarily planetary, but the thing is, you can still try and get some good stuff. But like nebula, stars, a lot of that stuff, it's perfect for, and they're cheap. So it's like, you know, you're gonna throw them on the telescope, let it get, you know, exposed to the elements and long exposures and everything. Yeah. There's so much support out there in the communities of the people who do astrophotography to help out with those kind of things. It's definitely out there and easy to access. So let me see. Yeah, so if anybody has any questions for me or Jason, obviously put them in the comments, or you can shout them out from your balcony if you want. We won't hear them, but you can try. So how are things in Rhode Island with all this Corona and COVID stuff?
Well, you know, we're tucked in one of the hot spots of the U.S. as far as the coronavirus counts, but we're tucked between Massachusetts, which is very high, and Connecticut, New York. And New York obviously is, been hit the worst.
Yeah.
So we've avoided that huge rush spike of cases, but there's still a considerable amount here. So basically, it's wear your mask. Don't. Everyone's working from home if you can work from home, but unemployment's through the roof right now.
Yeah.
Federal aid is coming in for that type of stuff. I've been self-employed for almost 12 years now, but a lot of my clients are universities and higher education, and they're slowing down, and they're changing their game plan for the fall. So right now everything's really slow.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just kind of taking advantage of this slowdown to try to get healthy and
Yeah.
just take care of myself a little bit better. I don't know if people know this. If you've been following me, you may have seen this, but at the end of February, I had a heart attack.
Oh, geez, I remember seeing that, and I about shat myself. I was like, "Holy, you're this young dude," and from what I remember, you're a runner as well, aren't you?
Well, I am not a runner.
Oh, okay, I thought you were.
Yeah,
okay.
No, the opposite. I'm not at all.
You're a sitter.
I am a sitter. Yeah, and I was just it's family history. The 40s are a time in my family when people start having heart attacks.
Yeah.
That's exactly what happened to me. So I ended up having 2 stents put in.
Wow.
And having to, now I'm on a handful of medications and all blood pressure and cholesterol stuff.
Wow.
But I'm just trying to take care of myself and eat better, and it's helping considerably. But just getting used to the meds is a little weird.
That's So I mean, how are you feeling? I want to say, what was it like? But as a young person, like young enough, like how old are you right now? I'm 41, so
I'm 44.
You're 44. Okay, so we're still relatively young,
We like to think so.
And what did you like? Did it even enter your mind at the time? Was it like I'm having a heart attack, or was it like, oh, my chest is kind of weird? I wonder what that's all about.
It actually was more of like a back pain. It was like I was over a friend's house, and I was feeling like this radiating discomfort, really, more than anything else, going through my back and down my arms and
Wow.
up into my jaw. My teeth were hurting, so it was uncomfortable. I was like, oh man, my back hurts. And of course, you say that around, and I'm younger than most of my friends, so they were like, yeah, whose back doesn't hurt?
Exactly.
So I'm like, yeah, I think I'm gonna head out. And I came home, and I just I said, oh, screw it. I went to bed, and luckily, I didn't wake up dead, and I felt okay the next day. But then the day after that, I was feeling really run down, and I was having some chest discomfort at that point. So I was kind of like, this isn't good.
Right.
I'm going to have it checked out by my doctor. So I called my doctor's office to try to get an appointment, and he wasn't in that day. So the nurse practitioner said, based on what you're telling me, you probably should go to the hospital, and which is not what I wanted to hear.
Yeah,
course,
that's the last thing you want to hear.
Go to the hospital. She goes, yeah, you should really be evaluated at an emergency room. So I went. I was close by to actually one of the best hospitals in Providence. So I told my boss, I says, you need to drive me to the hospital. So she did, and I ended up having a complete blockage in one of my arteries.
Wow.
Which they were able to fix with a stent, or 2 stents technically.
That is insane. Yeah. That is
so
insane.
2 days later I was back home, and everything's there didn't seem to be any long-term damage, but I am on a hand, like I said, about 5 or 6 different medications for blood pressure and cholesterol and things like that, and I'll always be on them. It's so they do have a tendency. The meds do have a tendency to make you feel a little run down sometimes, and can almost even give you cold type symptoms, which is scary in this era of Corona.
Yeah.
The last thing you want to do is feel like you have a cold.
Everything's like that. It's like, oh no, you might have cold and flu symptoms. It's like, yeah, I have those if I have a cold or a flu.
Maybe I don't. So after a couple of weeks realizing that no, I didn't have Corona, because this all happened at the end of February. So and then days later, everybody's on lockdown.
Yeah.
So I dodged that bullet as far as being in the
Jeez.
hospital, of not having to, worry about not having visitors and having to be on, on lockdown wards and all that other stuff. But then when I came home, I'm getting used to this new, these new meds. And like I said, Corona was happening at the same time. So I'm like, "Ugh." And it also puts me in a high risk group. Now
Yeah.
now I've got underlying cardiac issues technically.
Oh,
So the last
geez.
place I want to be is a hospital. So
Yeah, no
I'm trying to take
kidding.
care. Yeah, just you know,
Well, that's it's good that it, I guess, turned out as good as it could in your
yeah,
situation.
it could have turned out much worse. So
Yeah. Jeez. Oh, that's crazy to think about. I remember,
listen to
yeah, I
your body,
remember
people.
seeing that.
But
I
yeah,
always thought you were, well, for what it's worth, I always thought you were quite a bit younger than me actually, because I don't know, just like in general you look young, and like when I saw that go out on Twitter and you're like, "Oh, hey guys, I had a
hey
heart
everybody, I had
attack."
a heart attack, which is exactly what I did. I was like, hey, I'm in the hospital bed. I'm like, hey, I had a heart attack, and but I did do that. I wrote up this big post and everything because I wanted people to realize that yeah, it can happen to you if even if you're young and you feel like you're healthy, and and then what it feels like if it gets somebody to go see their doctor when they should, rather than waiting and figuring it's nothing,
Right,
then
right.
somebody may live where otherwise they would. They told me I had basically 2 days.
Wow.
So yeah,
Wow. That's insane, man. So, I mean, they can last that long too. It's like it just goes.
yeah, and it's not not every heart attack is like a massive.
Yeah.
Not everything is a is what are they call not everything is a complete cardiac arrest.
Right.
So
Right.
you can be
Wow.
having a heart attack and they're looking at you, telling you, yeah, you're having a heart attack right now. I'm like, really? Yeah, that's what the charts show.
That's
Um,
crazy. Oh my goodness. Well, I'm glad you're okay, and yeah,
Thank you.
can join me. I was interestingly enough, somebody that's on the viewership right now is up as late as me. It's somebody in the area where I'm at. Somebody from the Astronomy Club in Johannesburg here.
Oh,
Is actually watching. I didn't because I don't know everybody's handle. So he's like, "Oh hey,
is that
how's it going?"
John or
It's the Prima 946. Yeah, Tion. Yeah, so Tion's like, "Oh hey, it's Tion from." So WRAC is the West Rand Astronomy Club. So there's an area of Johannesburg called West Rand, which is I don't understand where the Rand comes from because I don't know enough about the area, but I live in an area called Randburg, and and then there's the West Rand and the East Rand, and anyway, the astronomy club in the area is kind of centered around the west side of Johannesburg, and anyway, yeah, so he's like, I'm from there, so yes. Oh, so Kevin Metler says, are we in the southern hemisphere? Well, I am, but Jason is not. Jason is in the U.S. in Rhode Island, and I am in Johannesburg, South Africa. So, thanks to the beauty of
magic
technology,
of the internet?
yeah, the internet machine, we are able to chat in real time, where it's not quite dark. Actually, it's probably dark for you almost, but it's it's been dark for several hours for me now. So. Um, I snuck in a quick imaging run there while we were talking. Things started to settle down a little bit. I'm really picky with this, but we can start to see now here. You can kind of see like a little bit of a wisp. You can see some of the detail in the north and south equator areas of these cloud bands, and it's starting to look pretty good actually. So. Um, Somebody else said in the comments, they said, "I'm glad you went with telescope time machine." So like, I don't know. I see it's late for me right now. I mean,
What does that mean? Is that
it's
an in joke? Did we
kind of
not?
it's a joke in,
Yeah.
in this stream. And I've only been doing this for a few weeks now. I mean, I've done it for years, but like I kind of go off and on. But I've really been kind of hitting it hard the last couple of weeks. Okay, and so
I see Kevin answered.
yeah, that's part of it. Yeah. So like the other thing was, so let's see, it's 2:30 in the morning here. I mean, I got about an hour of sleep, and so in a couple of hours it's gonna get wild because I'm gonna start seeing things probably. Um, but so we got to talking about the speed of light and the fact that basically what we're seeing, the image that we're seeing right now on the screen, is about somewhere between 45 and 55 minutes old, depending on where Jupiter is in its orbit, relative to Earth. Just purely because it's the speed of light. So the light from the sun hits Jupiter, bounces off, and then comes back to my telescope here on Earth, right?
See, I've got a little app here from my friend Scott McNeil, who runs an observatory.
Okay.
And so he says Jupiter right now. So Jupiter right now is 400. Now this is in miles. Sorry, everybody.
Oh no, we
Using
only
the
do
U.S. system.
kilometers on this, right?
But at 460,968 247. So 460,000 miles away. And
Okay, so
that
460,000.
converts to light minutes of 41.2 minutes.
So it's 41 point. So what we're seeing right now, thanks to Jason and his app Math from Scott McNeil, we're seeing 41.2 minutes in the past. So literally any telescope that you look through, anything you see, even the moon, I mean even like whatever from across the room technically is not real time. But specifically, this really tells us this thing. What we're seeing Jupiter right now is 41 minutes ago in real time. So we can't see right now because it's just too damn far away. It's what did I just did the math. So if I did this right,
741.8 thousand
kilometers.
Kilometers.
Yeah, I did. So you take it by about 1.6, and so it's 736 or so, 730,000 kilometers away, and at the speed of light, that takes about 41 minutes. So, thank you for doing the math. So they're doing the math in the comments.
He put together this great app for his Frosty Drew Observatory that he runs, and it's got all the planets and their distances in miles, what constellation they're in, how many light minutes away they are.
So okay, that's cool. I'm changing to a different color filter to see if we can get a little different view here. And this is green. The focus is not great there. It was looking good there for a little bit. It's amazing how much things. Oh wait a minute, I just needed to focus again. The focus points change with.
Prepper State of Mind asks, when did the Shoemaker-Levy 9 scars disappear?
You'll have to answer that because I have no idea.
I want to say they lasted. I want to say they lasted only several weeks.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like they would last very long, but I don't know. Because that was the comet that actually made the huge scar, like in the clouds. It just
a bunch of scars. Yeah. There was a whole. They each one had a letter. Yeah, there was like A, B, C.
Wow. Okay. Cool. See, that's the thing. So like when we look at this, 41 minutes ago, so that's why telescope time machine. This is a time machine. We're looking in the past. If we see bright flashes, like people need to scream. They need to scream in the comments because I'm not always looking at the feed right on. I'm looking at other stuff at the same time. So if you see like a bright flash, you need to tell me because that means that we actually, we're able to see some, crash into the planet in real time, which doesn't happen all that often on a large scale that I'll be able to see it through my telescope. But it does happen. So. It's pretty cool. If you remember, so it was the lunar eclipse last year that was visible in North America. Remember, there was the meteorite impact on the moon, while millions of people were watching it. Just happened to be during that eclipse. Was really, really cool because there's always somebody looking at stuff, but when millions of people are looking at it at the same time, and then all of a sudden you get this meteor impact and there's a bright flash on the moon, and one person's like, whoa, what's that? And like, oh, well, we can instantly see around the world, that like, yeah, a whole bunch of everybody else saw that, so that wasn't just a camera artifact, it's like actually something smashed into the moon while we were looking at it. It's so cool. Exactly, yeah. So pragmatic entropy says telescopes are time machines technically, so it makes sense. Yeah, it's the cheapest time machine, low tech, even. yeah, so we just got to talking about that because we were looking at Saturn, we were looking at Jupiter, we were looking at Mars, and they're all different at different times. And then it brought up a point when we were discussing time, the time lag. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. The huge time lag between what we see and when it is. Um, the I was lucky enough last year to be able to see quite a few close calls between the moon and Saturn. Um, and so I took a photo of Saturn right next to the moon, and occulting the moon, occulting Saturn. So it was actually going behind Saturn, going behind the moon, and that made me really think about that whole time difference, because you look at the moon and it's about 1.3 seconds away in light time. So, and then Saturn is about 1.3 hours, give or take. So like you're looking at two different times at the exact same moment through your telescope, which I mean just blows your freaking mind, because you're just like, wait a minute, like whoa, when you really think about it. So that just kind of, we went off on this big tear of like, okay, we're talking about time travel and all of this stuff.
What amazes me is how much space there is just between Jupiter and Saturn. They are neighboring planets, but Saturn is twice as far
Yeah.
from us as Jupiter is. So
Right.
it's like you can get all the way out to Jupiter, and then in order to get to the next planet out, you have to do that again.
Yeah. No, it's insane. And
Yeah.
well, I mean, just the fact that it takes light, 41 minutes to get to Jupiter, but we've got machines orbiting that thing right now, and taking pictures, of it. And like, how the hell did we, figure out how to send these things there so they actually get there? Because it's not like we can steer them in real time. You know what I mean?
Right, and the fact that we're using other planets' gravity wells in order to even do that. So it's not even, you don't aim at a planet.
Right.
You can't do that. And because of fuel, you can't even aim when you're doing planets like that. You can't even aim at where the planet's going to be. You have to bounce around other planets and make the gravity well, but not fall into orbit around them, which isn't very easy to do, but and not hit the planet itself.
Yeah.
So you it's really tricky, and the fact that that's something that they're able to engineer is
Yeah.
really, really fascinating.
Yeah, the math involved, just like, I don't want to think about it, because like I went to engineering school and university, but like I had to take a lot of math. I wasn't that good at it. So,
it's not easy.
So it's just like, thinking about that just drives me nuts. Man, the focus is actually pretty good here. I think I'm gonna do an imaging run. So Renee actually asked if I was gonna do an RGBL imaging run, and I believe I'm going to do that now. So I'm gonna.
I've got an art degree, so I can't say anything about math.
Sure, you can. Come on.
That is not that's not my forte.
That doesn't mean you can't say anything. That just means.
Oh yeah,
that
I can say that I can't do it.
That just means that you didn't have to take a lot of it in school. That's all. But I mean,
my numbers slip right through my head. I can't hold on to them. If I read a number stat, I need to look back at it 3 or 4 times. By the time I read it and then go to write it down somewhere else, it's gone.
Listen, I think, I don't know. For me, it's similar. I don't process things that quickly either. So it's like, the internet's a great thing for me, because I can think about what I say before I say it, and that's why live streaming kind of freaks me out sometimes, because it's like, oh, I'm on the spot now.
You better be right. You know what? It's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Yeah, I try and stay away from saying exact numbers, because I'm like, oh, it's around this thing, and I may be wrong by maybe double that. Okay, so I'm gonna do an imaging run now of Jupiter. Keep this thing in. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna set limits. I'm gonna do 40 45 seconds per color. And I'm going to tell the software to do it for me so we can just kind of watch it happen. It's like watching paint dry, but that's why I like to do it automatically.
So are these values that you're just guessing at based on your previous imaging?
I'm not guessing. I'm basically standing on the shoulders of the giants. Damien Peach and Christopher Go and some of the best terrestrial planetary imagers are out there have basically said, well, and you can do the math if you want to, but they've done it, and they've done it more than me. But basically, you just need to figure out how far is the planet going to move and rotate, before you run out and you start getting blurry data because of actual, rotation. So since I'm doing the general rule of thumb, since I'm doing 4 different colors, what they say is that you should stay under 2 minutes or so for an entire imaging sequence. So if you're shooting with a one-shot color camera where it collects all the color at once, you can shoot up to around 2 minutes before you see motion blur, literally motion blur from the rotation of the planet. But for me, since I'm shooting with a monochrome camera and color filters, I have to actually set it so like I'm shooting 4 different colors and then so I can do about 30 seconds per color. The other thing that I could possibly do, it's just more work and I'm not willing to go through the work at this moment, is you can do something called derotate, which means you can use software that will do a 3D map of the image that you've captured onto a software ball, basically, and then actually rotate that just a little bit based on the timestamps of the data that you've captured. And there's software that does that for you. It's called WinJupos. It's pretty cool. It's got a lot of ephemeris information and stuff as well. But it's cool. So anyway, I'm going to do 45 seconds is a little long, but I got lucky with it last time, so I'm going to stick with it for now. Also because while it seems like a lot of magnification, this is actually not as much magnification as some of the best planetary images are at, just because you can really only use that better magnification when seeing and atmospheric conditions are perfect. So I'm going to go ahead and do an automated capture sequence of all 4 colors. So I'm capturing at 200 frames per second. And the files get quite big. You can see the file size there on the right just add up real quick. So these things are probably going to be around, I'm going to guess 2 gigs, maybe 4 gigs per color file. So we're going to do red, green, blue, and then loom, and then we can do it again. So
modern computing. Remember the days when a gigabyte at home was unheard of?
Yeah, my first computer in my room when I was a kid was it didn't have a hard drive at all. So I would load the operating system. I'd load DOS.
You just put in 5 1/4.
Yeah, with a 5 1/4 inch floppy and do some programming in BASIC, and that was my thing when I was 12 years old. So and now, yeah, I've got 2 computers surrounding me with an extra screen and capturing data at 200 frames per second, and it's insane. I feel old, but I know a lot of people out there are talking about tape drives too.
Oh yeah. top loading platters.
Jeez, man, insane. Somebody in the comments say, yeah, we were talking about sending our probes to Jupiter and everything. Gravity is key. Yeah, exactly.
And the amazing thing is they did a lot of that computing power with that type of operating systems. Yeah. And memory systems and stuff. They were using top-loading platter drives,
right,
to store all that data, which is incredible. But that's
insane.
Yeah, I mean, that was cutting edge.
Well, and when I think one of the movies that really did a good job of showing it, one of the recent ones was Hidden Figures. You know, when they're looking at the first people to use computers and the women at NASA that did all the calculations and all this stuff, and it's just like, and they taught the guys how to use the computers, and it's like, yeah, check this out. Like, how awesome was that? Like, they were doing that with slide rules and with like. I
Well,
can't.
just the term computer was originally
It was a person.
a job title
Yeah.
for.
It's like, what are you? I'm a computer. It's like,
I'm
oh,
a computer.
okay,
Yeah.
wow. Are those our robot
I don't even know. I wouldn't
overlords?
know what to do with a side rule. I'd be like, wow, this is cool.
Yeah.
Look, it's this big. Now it's this big.
Well,
You know, put it in a little case. I'd get a kick out of it.
you're a
I
graphic
have no
designer.
idea
You
how to
you
I'm
could use it to
drawing
draw
lines
straight
with it.
lines. Yeah.
I feel like I could draw a long line, a short line.
Hey, you could hold the one end and use it as a protractor or whatever, and
Right?
make a
Yeah. No,
circle.
I can make frames for comics. You know, be a nice square here.
Exactly.
I have no idea how to actually do math with it.
Right. Oh yes. So Pragmatic Entropy says his was in 8088. He built in 1985. Yeah, I mean that's just like, oh my goodness. But back when we built
What
our,
model there? In 8088. Oh
yeah,
my goodness.
yeah, it's like,
The first computer I ever used, my uncle got into computing and programming. You know, back when he was, I think his first job was writing up code of whatever physical system for punch cards.
oh wow, okay,
People who were punching in and out at factories here in Rhode Island. There were a lot of jewelry factories and stuff. So that was a
okay,
job that he had gotten, and then he kept going with it. But he had in the late 70s, early 80s, he had a Radio Shack computer, and it had a monitor built in. There were two 5 1/4 drives. The monitor was just a monochrome, amber
yeah.
monochrome monitor, and the keyboard, and it was all integrated into one system. And they stuck a handle on it and called it portable. It probably weighed about 60 pounds. But and I remember playing on that computer because it had little games,
On
and
the
they were all
portable
ASCII
computer, yeah.
text character games. But I got a kick out of it.
Oh, that's funny.
Just
Remember
the idea that you could play video games in the house.
yeah. Remember the movie Hackers way back in the 90s?
I did not see Hackers.
You didn't? Oh, okay.
No.
I think it was it Hackers. Yeah, it was Hackers. Um, anyway, they had the portable computer. The same idea. It was like, oh wow, you've got a portable. It's just like this thing was like a handle. It was like, okay,
Yeah.
no. Or the first laptops they had. I don't even remember. It's been a while since.
And I had a one year for my birthday. I was given a Texas Instruments TI 99 4A, which was basically a keyboard. Now this was in the era of Atari.
Okay.
But this was a computer, and
Yeah.
they were trying to fight with Atari, saying, well, on ours you can play games, but you can also program, and they gave you a book of BASIC,
Right.
so you could programming, but your TV was the monitor. It had the little RF switch, just like the Atari 2600s had, and they had basically knockoff games that were just like Atari games, but they were in cartridge form.
Okay.
And you sit down and I'm copying the BASIC, and I spend an hour or two copying all this code, so that way you get a little character on the screen.
Yeah.
The waves is on. It's pink, pink. Yeah.
I used to go to the library and check out programming books or game books, with basic games in them. And it was just literally lines of code that you would have to copy from the physical book onto the screen or whatever, onto the computer, and then play the games. And I remember that's what taught me how to program. And I mean, that's my day job now. I'm a software engineer. And like, I remember, so like I wrote that stuff, I copied that stuff, but I then learned, what it all meant and how to do it. And I'm like, oh, cool. So I remember when I was 13 or something like that. I don't remember how old. It was like 12 or 13. I actually wrote from scratch. I learned how to use some graphics stuff, and I wrote a program for my little sister to teach her math, it was just like a quiz program, what's 4 plus 4, and then she would have to type in 2 or what, it's like all these. 4 plus 4 is not 2, obviously, but she would have to type in the answer. Yeah, exactly. It was a big joke. I actually screwed her up for life. But I wrote this program to help her with math in basic, when I was young, and it was all from me going to the library and getting these books to copy.
See, you never know where you're going to get that initial kick.
Yeah, no, it was crazy. So somebody's asking, they want to see moons, and right now Io is actually, let's see if it's still on the surface. I gotta look at my planetarium app here and see. I think it's still, Io's almost off the surface. It's just really hard to see because it's the resolution that we're getting right now isn't as good as I would like. But so Io is actually, we can see it every once in a while. Okay, so right here where the mouse cursor is, every once in a while when things get nicer, you'll see like a bright spot. And that would be, this is where Io is. So you kind of have to use your mind eyes and kind of see it when it gets nice and in focus. And Io is going to be right about there. Let's see if I can tweak the focus a little bit more. Things keep...
Now, is this just atmospheric, distortion that we're getting, or is it focus, or what is?
No, this is atmospheric stuff. I'm adjusting the focus a little bit here and there, but with the little wobble that we're getting. So, like, when we look through the telescope, it's getting a little better. Yeah, so you can kind of see Io right here, just barely. You got to kind of use your imagination in a way. Every once in a while it pops in. But yeah, so Io's right here. Oh, it's actually going to be cool.
I see it.
So right about here. So that's Io. That is like.
So is there going to be is there going to be a shadow effect, or has that already happened?
That's already happened. So
that's already happened.
The sun is down. The angle of the sun is down on the bottom, basically, just slightly, and so that's going to cause the shadows to go the other direction. Right now. Oh, that's cool that we can actually see that. That means I need to do another imaging run after I did this refocus, because as temperatures change slightly and atmospheric things change, you actually do have to change focus every once in a while. So,
yeah. You have a question here from Pragmatic Entropy.
Okay.
They're saying, I don't understand how focus at that distance works. How does the aperture move finely enough?
Okay, so the way that works is I have a little motor. If I'm not answering your question correctly, let me know. But I've got a little tiny motor on the focus knob that moves the focus tube on the telescope in and out by literally micrometers. Like, you can't even see it move. You can't even see it move because it's moving it at such a small increment. And you can really see Io now if you look at the screen right there. So there's Io. It's moving that focus point so small that it's micro bits. And that's basically why it matters. But the thing is, as the temperature changes, the mirror, the metal in the telescope, the air changes. The temperature of the air makes a difference as far as what the focus is going to look like, and that's why it really matters. It's actually friction. There's a stepper motor. I don't know how much people know about the electronic stuff, but there's a little motor in there that has very, very small increments, and it can move just a few little bits at a time, which is way more accurate than your fingers can do. So that's basically why you can do that. Sega Genesis. I like how you mentioned a Sega Genesis. Oh, well, so an ex-coworker
of mine. Or Mega Drive, depending on what market you are in.
So David Bill is an ex-coworker of mine, a fellow geek, programming nerd geek. He's a gamer geek as well, but he's a little older than me. So yeah, he's got the dibs on the old stuff. Yes, Dave, I just called you old.
I still got a bunch of original systems set up.
Do you?
Attached to a Yeah, attached to a CRT TV
Oh my
because
goodness.
yeah, well, they don't. The old systems, they don't look good when you put them when you stretch them out onto a digital television.
So you got an old CRT just for
I
playing that.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
just for playing that stuff. And I mean, I've got one of the I've got a PS4
Yeah,
and that stuff too. But I still love playing the old cartridge games.
yeah. Wow. So I was asked, let's see, is it gear or belt driven? The focuser is gears, but with a stepper motor. It's very small. And then also I was asked how much of that is digital zoom. Well, there's actually no digital zoom with the camera, just because I'm recording pixel for pixel. Um, and what you're seeing, I mean, uh, it's going through YouTube compression. It's going through everything. It's the actual field of view. I'll show you the field of view of the camera as it is as soon as this image capture sequence completes in about 2 seconds here. It's looking quite nice. You check out IO there. You can really see that. That's cool. I love it when you can start seeing stuff. See, this is cool. The higher it gets, the less atmosphere, the less air it's going through, and so the cleaner image I get. So let me zoom out now. Zoom out. I'm actually just going to use the full field of view of the entire chip of the camera now. This is um, this is how big it is on the camera right now. It's pretty small. And to think about Jupiter as this huge planet. Well, when it's 736 or something like that, 1,000 kilometers away, it's damn small. So that's the actual. This is no digital zoom. This is straight up. This is pixel for pixel on the screen. How big it is on that camera, which is the camera is right around a 1080p sensor. But it's the size of your pinky fingernail. So this is how small it is at 2,304 millimeters on a sensor the size of your pinky nail.
And then you got to remember you're looking at a planet that's 11 times wider than Earth.
Only 11.
Yeah, only 11. Sorry.
What was it? There was a stat on Jupiter, and ooh, focus is really getting nice now. See, this is almost. It gets a little bit better than this, but I mean, this is pretty good for a backyard telescope setup. This just means that I'm gonna do another image sequence, because if I can get a nice one of IO, that's cool. Oops, I need to readjust that. Okay, there we go. The sound effects do help, if you're wondering. It makes everything better. Oops, I screwed it up. Are we on red? That's the thing. Oh. Where are we? There we go. Need to do that. Need to make sure we're on red. We're on red. Oh, that IO is really popping on red. You can really see it on the red filter. That's cool. That's super cool. Okay, somebody asked, do I stack in Registacks? I'm sorry I didn't see that question until now. No, I use a stacking program called AutoStackers. It's awesome, and I think it actually does better than Registacks, so I would recommend checking out AutoStacker. The funny thing is, these programs that I use to do the image processing of planets, they're old. A lot of them haven't been touched for many years, because they do what they need to do, and they do it well. And so, like, I mean, I use a Windows 7 computer still to do this stuff. Happy Saturn Day. Is it
Saturday?
Is it?
What happens on?
Yeah, what happens on? Is that like Saturnalia? Is that like one of those things? We're gonna look at Saturn in a little bit, because it's in the sky right now. I can look. It's actually just below Jupiter. Let's see. Yeah, the seeing's actually not too bad. The thing is, it's 3 o'clock in the morning, um, and I think the seeing right before sunset. So I've got another about 2.5 hours until sunset or sunrise, and it just gets really nice in this time of the night. Um, let's see. What else have we got? Questions here. Somebody says, what type of tripod are you using? A massive tripod. A tripod that's basically the size of my forearm. Each leg is the size of my forearm, and it weighs. It's really, really heavy and big. The telescope behind me, I can wrap my arms around it, but that's about it as far as size. And I said it earlier, and I'll say it again, it weighs about 25 kilograms, so a little over 50 pounds, just for the telescope itself, not for the tripod, just for the telescope. So that thing it's like a workout. Like I lift it, to get up. It's actually taller than me. So it's big and heavy, and yeah. Let's see, what else?
It's a gear hobby.
Yeah, yeah. It is definitely. What is the elevation where I'm at? Elevation here is, I think it's about 2,000 meters above sea level. It's similar to Denver, Colorado, in the States, depending on where you are and what your relative views of things are. Wow, look at that Io. How cool is that on the limb? You can really see it when it's on the limb because it's so much brighter than that right up here. You're gonna see because it's just been moving slowly. Oh, that's so rad. I love seeing that stuff. I mean, we're seeing a moon around another planet in front of the other planet. Yeah, that's just cool, man.
Yeah, it is really shining there.
Yeah. Somebody said earlier they were asking to see Callisto. Or any of the other moons. I've got another.
Callisto's way out.
Yeah, it's way out. Geez, I can't even see it at all. Is it next to Ganymede right now?
Yeah, it's way out. Well, Ganymede and Callisto are basically mashed together out there on the far reaches.
Oh, yeah. Okay, we can see it now. So this is this program I've got up is another program. So I've got another little tiny telescope with a camera on it.
See, that's what it looks like in my telescope.
It's almost what it looks like in. Let me make the exposure a little bit more.
I'll tell you though, when I take my scope out and I show the public back when I was doing that, and it was safe to let people look into your telescope and come within 6 feet of you. Yeah. Views like this would really blow people's minds.
Yeah, yeah. And I think they still would. Okay, so here we go. This is.
Oh, that's great.
You have to kind of blow it out in order to see that. But so we've got. I mean, Io is on top of the planet right now. What are the other? Then Europa, Ganymede, and Callisto. Okay, so Io is right here. This is Europa.
Can you underexpose that?
Underexpose it?
Well, like that, so that way Jupiter's glare isn't. Like,
I can try.
Really, I don't know. I don't know what you can do.
Well, I can do. Let's see. Let me try it. Mess with this. Oops. I need to go the other direction. So this is just through the guide scope. But yeah, let me. Oh, come on. There we go. Sorry. Let's see. Yeah, see, the thing is, like, getting Jupiter and the moons at the same time is difficult because the moons are so much dimmer. So, I mean, I just have to pretty much overexpose. But yeah, so we've got Io is here, Europa is here, and then Ganymede and Callisto are those two. I'm not sure which one is which, but somebody said in the comments that Callisto actually has really high surface brightness, which I don't know about, but you might know some about that.
What's that again? I'm sorry.
The surface brightness of Callisto, is it pretty bright as far as that's concerned?
Compared to Io, yeah. I mean, not so. Europa would be the brightest.
Is it? Okay.
And yeah, Europa is one of the brightest objects out there, as far as reflectivity, as far as its albedo. I think the first brightest object world in the solar system is, as far as reflectivity, is Enceladus.
Oh, okay.
So that's, it reflects almost all of the light that hits it.
Okay. Okay. Sorry, the seeing just popped really nice all of a sudden. I mean, look at Io. You don't even have
Yeah,
to.
that is really nice.
You don't even have to like imagine it. That's just good. That means I'm going to shoot it. I'm gonna shoot it again because I have to. Yeah. So we were looking at where the moons are, seeing them all at the same time.
That almost reminds me of some of those images I've seen of that have like a comet impact or something like
Yeah,
that.
it does look
So,
like that. Yeah. So if we ever
I know
see
you
them,
mentioned Chris Go, and he'd captured quite a few of those
oh, it's
over the
insane.
years.
Yeah. Well, and you can actually take. So that's one of the things that I've only done a couple of times, just because like, listen, I can't do everything in the world with my data. I just don't have time. But you can take your video files and actually run them through programs that will look for bright spots for you, and then it'll flag any individual frame that might have a bright spot. Then you can go back and look at that and see, like, is it legit, or is it just a camera artifact, or what is it? And then you can submit those results to scientists who will study them and see if in fact that they're legit, if something happened or not. And then they'll use that. It's actually a useful scientific thing to do, that you can do from your backyard. I don't do enough of that. I'd like to do more. I should do more. And you can actually submit these images to planetary scientists. I forgot the name of the website. I'll see if I can post it later. But there's a few websites that you can actually upload your planetary images to. And as long as you annotate them and tell the people where you were, what the time in UT was when you were capturing, you can actually submit these planetary images to where planetary scientists will maybe use them if they need images at a certain time, because we're not constantly monitoring high resolution images of planets all the time like we are the sun and all of that. I don't think, are we? We're not constantly, we don't have stuff.
No, a lot of that is amateur.
Yeah. So
I mean, there are surveys that are going on, at various telescopes. Caltech's doing surveys, with some of the Keck 2 scopes and the Subaru scopes and stuff like that.
mm-hmm.
But those are specific programs, and they're usually targeting much deeper space objects. A lot of the things that get spotted with planets is amateur imaging.
Yeah, that's cool, man. And there's a lot you can do from your backyard that people don't really think about.
And there's just every year there are more and more people who are keeping an eye on what's going on out there. I love when the light level drops as the filters change.
Yeah, no, it's cool because it's like that visual representation of the filter changing. It's moving.
Well, plus all that, as an avid imager, okay, or image processor,
mm-hmm.
I love those deeper images because I know that I can always bring up the detail. Darker image, as opposed to dealing with an overexposed image where you actually permanently lost a lot of detail. So I see that darker image, and I'm like, ooh, give me that. I want that.
Well, so I monitor the histogram, and I know you can see it. They can't see it on YouTube right now. I can move it over. I actually monitor the histogram constantly while we're looking at this, and I keep everything below blown out, because the last thing you want to do is overexpose, and then because you'll lose as soon as you overexpose an image, you lose anything that you've ever had. However, for this planetary data, it's actually pretty noisy because of the speed at which it captures all the data. It's quite noisy, so bringing up from the shadows is a little harder to do. Oh man, check out Io. It's really right on the limb there. I like the light drop off around the limb of the planet as well. It's just so cool. This is probably one of my favorite views, is just when those moons are just right there. Okay, so it's blurry on that one because I've actually got an infrared filter in the train that I don't use very for this. I'm gonna run it again. So I've already captured about 60 gigabytes
Oh wow.
tonight. So hard drive space is like the biggest issue with any of this. Check out that IO. Oh, that's so cool, man. It's like a little pimple on the planet. Renee asks, am I using SharpCap to guide? SharpCap is that other software that was showing the moons further out. That is SharpCap, yes. I'm not using it to guide, but I'm using a guide camera and guide scope, just basically so that I can make sure everything's lined up. And in case I lose the planet, the main scope, it's easier to bring it back. So I'm not guiding right now. Fire Capture actually has an auto guide feature in it that I use sometimes that'll actually move the scope with the planets for you. Sometimes it gets a little wonky, so I don't use it all that often, but it is pretty cool. Let's see, what else do we have? Oh man, look at that. That's so cool, man. I love it. I love that view. We'll be able to do Saturn just now as well. And Jason, you don't. If you need to go or anything, you just let me know. But you don't have to stick around for the entire stream if you don't.
Okay. No, that's fine. That's fine. I at least want to see Saturn.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Okay. So I know I can hold you long enough. You're like, oh yeah, we'll see Saturn just
I
now.
got you.
Just
yeah,
now. Yeah, Saturn will look good too. Saturn. We had this argument on the feed last time, because we were arguing what's better, Saturn or Jupiter. What do we want to look at? And the thing is, with me, Jupiter is awesome because of all the cloud bands and moon details that you can get like this. But Saturn, to me, when you look at it through the telescope, it's just like this sci-fi experience. Like,
well, yeah, Saturn's surreal.
There's just something about it. You look at it and you don't believe what you're seeing. Like,
because it looks wrong.
It does. It's just like, what are these rings?
Yeah.
Like, what? This shouldn't be a thing
right,
that you can see. Like, and whenever I do any outreach, events, it's just like, or just, I've done a few talks, and I always like to bring a telescope when I do that. And after the talk, we'll look at whatever's up, and if it's the moon or planets, and like you see these older people who have never looked through a telescope in their life, and you say, oh no, check it out, what are you looking at? Oh, we're looking at the moon, or we're looking at Jupiter. And they're like, what, really? You're looking at a planet through that? I'm like, right. Yeah. So they'll look at it and they'll look at it like, oh, and they'll step back and they'll look again, and they'll do this thing, and all of a sudden they'll turn into a child, like just like right. that. This 50-year-old adult human will turn into a little kid, and it's just incredible to do. I love doing that to people and just making them.
So one of the things that Scott McNeil and I had done several times is we'll set up in a public spot when the weather's nice, and we'll have he'll have his scope and then I'll have my scope, and we'll be showing things to people. But it's not an event that a lot of people. Like, we'll put it out on Facebook or something like that.
Yeah.
But it's not an event that people are coming to. So we're getting a lot of like passerby.
Yeah.
Who were just coming from the restaurant or the bar, or walking with their kids or something like that, and we'll get them to look through. So they weren't expecting this to be part of their evening.
Yeah.
And every now and then, maybe 1 out of 10 people be like, no, I'm not interested, and they'll keep walking, and so I'm like, okay, well, whatever, for whatever reason you didn't feel like it, but the people that do stop and they go, sure, I'll take a look, and it just, you're right, it totally blows their mind. It turns them into a fascinated kid.
Yeah.
And that's great.
It makes them think, I think, about like. It's amazing what you can do with people's minds when you get them into that state where they're just like the wonder, you know, because you lose that, you know, when we grow up, we lose that like, oh, space is really cool, and then because you just stop thinking about it. But the thing
Right.
is, you know, it's so mind-bogglingly huge and far apart and everything. It's just like all it takes is that one view, and then it's like boom, you know, you're in. This is
Well,
actually,
look at Io now. It's just
oh,
like
that's
hovering
so
right
cool.
above the limb.
That is so cool, man. I love it. I love it. Yeah, so there we go. We get to see Io. I'm pumped. Yes, you are welcome. The people in the comments are saying thanks for doing this. Saw the link on Twitter. Yeah, Io is definitely starting to separate.
And
Um,
if you and if you love Jupiter and you have access to Prime TV or PBS
hmm
on demand, there's a great episode of the planets on Jupiter.
Okay.
That's on PBS on demand right now, and that's you can get that through Prime or
Okay. Cool. Yeah, they have
yeah.
a lot of their stuff
I
on
just
there.
watched it. I watched it last week, and it was really really good.
Okay. You know what? You know what's really bugging me right now with all this lockdown. So I've been in my house for a month, and I haven't left. Today was the first time I left to get groceries, and it was a horrible experience. But being stuck in your house, you know, all you're doing is like I work from home and I've been working and everything, but looking at Netflix and everything, and it's all this geo locking, man. I can't watch Amazon Prime from here,
Uh,
even though I've got an account. I'm like, why do they do that to me? Ah, I'm not going to complain anymore though because there's a lot more other problems out there. It's just like,
First world problems.
yeah, exactly. But I'm in the first world and the third world right now, so it's like there's a lot worse issues. But I never understood the idea. Like when you look at planets like this, there's no borders, man. There's nothing you can't see. You know, when you go out into space, when the astronauts on the space station, they look down at the planet. They don't see borders. They see the planet. You know, I want to have that view someday. I would love to go to space. People ask me sometimes like, would you go to space? It's like hell yes, I would. That would be amazing. Like, would it? Of course, it'd be scary as hell, and like, you know, you could die easily because you're separated by this little metal wall of between you and nothing. But like that I would love that. I would love that feeling. I think it'd be cool.
Until you hear that little dink, and
Yeah,
that's the sound of the
we won't
the
talk about that.
little micro
Yeah.
meteorite hitting the sky. You okay? Is that right? Yeah, fine. It happens all the time.
No big deal. No big deal.
Yeah.
I've actually got to turn down the gain on the camera now. It's getting quite bright. So I'm going to go back to these. I'm going to adjust this. The histogram is getting pretty bright on these. So the higher it gets in the atmosphere, the higher it gets above the horizon, the brighter it gets too, because the less air it's traveling through. But this is green. Let's find red. Okay, red needs to be there. And blue. Okay, there's that. Okay, cool. So now we're going to move it back. I'm actually going to save some hard drive space now for Saturn. We'll just stay on this view for a little bit longer. I'm going to really zoom in a little more so we can give a nice view of Jupiter. So yeah, this is the red filter. It's actually got some nice detail as well. I'm gonna switch to green. I don't like green. I think I prefer the luminance and the red. Those are my two favorite views of the planet. I mean, that just gives a nice view there. Okay, I'm gonna actually go get a refill on my coffee. I'm gonna turn off the cameras. Not the. I'll leave the telescope up, but I'm gonna turn off mine and your camera just for a second. Unless you want to talk. Do you have any projects going on right now that you want to talk about?
Well,
Any of your work?
So, well, if you want, I mean, I can pop up a couple of pictures of Jupiter and Io.
That would actually be cool. Yeah. Do you want to do a screen share of that?
Yeah, I could do that.
Okay, cool. And then I can make your video big. Let's do that. So we'll leave this view here, and then while I go do that, that's mine.
So I can't. Can I share?
I think so. Give it a try and see if it pops up.
No, because you're sharing.
Oh, we can't both do it at the same time. Damn.
Right.
Okay. Hang on just a second. And I will. I can't really unshare this at this moment. Was it on those links that you sent me?
I had my Flickr album there that I sent. That had some shots in there, but you got to kind of like, look through them. That's why I was just gonna scroll down into some shots of Io and Jupiter and.
I'll go to your Flickr album quick. Because I think I can do that. Okay, so let's find. Oh, this is a cool one. Oh, okay. How about the eruption on Io?
Oh, okay.
We'll pull that over. Okay, so there is your image of the eruption on Io. I'll let you chat about that a little bit.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So this is trying to see which one. So this is a color composite made from images that were acquired by NASA's Galileo spacecraft, and it shows an erupting plume on the limb of Io. Now, Io is in my process, I've rotated Io so that way north on Io is to the left here, but this plume is just coming up from the limb there, and that's going up, over 100, almost 200 kilometers into space, basically above Io, and that's because the not only the energy of the volcanic plume, the volcanic activity itself, but also Io has low gravity. So whatever eruptions happen there are going to happen at an extended altitude. I wanted to see. I'm going to look in my data here because I want to see what date this was taken on. Oh, here it is. Okay. Yeah, so this was on May 6, 1997. And I had mentioned earlier that Galileo took images in multiple wavelengths, and then what I'll do is I'll take those images and I'll stack them in Photoshop in the image channels, so that way I have a color version. And then from there, because Galileo's cameras used red, green, and violet, I had to do a post adjustment to bring it back to natural color. So this is an approximate natural color on Io. If you see other colorations on there that are like really, really yellow or super saturated reds and blues, those would be an extended color. This is actually more what your eye would see on Io. So it's got that pizza type coloration. And you can see there that there are no visible impact craters on Io, which is really interesting, and that's because it's constantly being resurfaced by all of that basaltic and sulfur dioxide volcanism sprays out material and recoats the moon. So craters just don't last. When one does happen, and there may be some if we got a rover down on Io to or a low altitude. Or I don't even think that there was any spotted in low altitude. So maybe some micrometeorite craters, just because it's going to happen, but they don't last very long. And obviously, anything large scale has totally been wiped out, in the past several thousand years. So this is part of that beautiful surface of Io, and all of those colorations from the that you see there, the greens, the reds, the whites. That's just that sulfur dioxide in various stages of aging. It comes out one color and it lands as this frost, and then it eventually starts to change color, and you end up getting the reds and then the greens and then blacks and things like that. So.
That's amazing.
It's really fascinating, really beautiful little moon. Now, some people hate it. Some people I think Io's ugly. Whether you think it's the ugliest moon or the most beautiful moon in the solar system, that's entirely up to you. But it's definitely unique. There's nothing else like this in the solar system.
I think the fact that this exists, and that we can take photos of it like this and process it like this is amazing. This is such a cool.
Right.
How cool would it be if our moon was like this and we could do like close-up high-resolution imaging of, active volcanoes on another, body in the solar system from my backyard. That'd be so cool.
Or like when there's an eruption, you just look up and there it is.
Yeah. And it's like always happening. Oh, that'd be amazing.
Firing out into space. And like I said, Io is approximately, the same size as our moon. So if Io were at the distance of our moon, it would be about the same size in the sky.
Yeah. And then here's another one of the entire so it's got the phased. I love this phased look as well.
Right.
It's so cool.
And all that yellow greenish stuff, that's all sulfur lavas. And
wow.
That's why if you were walking around on the on the hot crunchy surface of Io, if you could take a breath and not die, it would be rotten eggs. It's
yeah, that makes it uglier all of a sudden. But look at that on that left side of that image, in the dark spots, you can see those volcano tops like being the only thing lit. That's just
right.
It's like what we see on the moon, on the Terminator of the moon.
Yeah.
But for some reason, this is it's more mind blowing, I think, than what we see on our moon. It's so cool. That's awesome. So yeah, if you guys want to, definitely go and look at Jason's website, lightsinthedark.com, and then check him out on Twitter and Instagram and Flickr and all the photos that he's created, these images that he's created using data and images that were captured from all the different NASA and other space program images.
Yeah, so there's various ways to access this data. NASA has what they call the PDS, the Planetary Data System, and that's where they store all of the high resolution files from various space missions. But it's a little tough to use because you have to put in all these search parameters and stuff. For things from Galileo, Voyager, Cassini, New Horizons, I use the Opus server that's run by SETI, and it's a much easier system to search. And I can search by like time, instrument name, spacecraft name, and then even the time and date. So if I want to go, and I do this a lot just for fun, if I want to go find images, what did Cassini image on this day, in this year? I can go do that, and I can say, oh, wow, I got some really nice views of Titan 10 years ago today. So if I haven't already processed those, I'll download the stuff and then put a quick image together and go, hey, everybody, look, Titan was imaged by Cassini 10 years ago today. Isn't it cool?
Wow. No, that's rad, man. Jeez.
And so these features here, this is from one of Galileo's close passes over the surface of Io. and it shows what's called patera, and so those are volcanic vents that are on the surface of Io. On Io, volcanoes don't necessarily work like they do here on Earth. They don't necessarily build up a big shield mountain, Mount Rainier or something like that. Where you have this big snow-capped mountain type thing.
Oh, wow.
On Io, a lot of the volcanoes are these vents, and then they'll get surrounded by that dark lava. As it hardens and solidifies, it gets darker. So here, like for example, that lake there in the foreground, if I remember correctly, well, I don't have to remember correctly because I can go back to my image file because I think I jotted that down. So this is made from images acquired by Galileo in February of 2000, and that dark lake in the foreground is about 30 miles long, 70 miles wide.
Wow.
So it would basically be half the size. It would fill half of my home state. Would fit into that there. And the rim around it, if it looks to you like it's raised, it's actually lowered. These are kind of like going down into the surface of Io. So that volcanic lake there has walls around it that are easily 1 or 2 miles high.
Wow.
It's an enormous structure.
That's
so this
insane.
whole area is called Tavashtar Patere.
Wow. That's insane. That's so cool.
And that's about natural color.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah. But it was tricky for me to adjust to that. So I used a lot of different resources to find what the actual color would be.
Yeah.
So I was looking at some of the most recent work that was done by I think his name was Paul Schenk over at the Lunar and Planetary Institute. Jason Perry, also for Planetary Society, did some good work with color, and Bjorn Johnson did some great work with Io color. But it is tricky because Galileo wasn't getting right in the RGB.
Okay, I really love this one. I'm gonna move back over to the telescope quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Our seeing conditions really got quite nice here. We're looking nice here. And I adjusted the focus a little bit, so yeah. From the close-up view of Io from the space probe to the far-out view of Io from my backyard.
Oh, there it is. Yeah.
Somebody, let's see, what have we got? Yeah, that's true. Somebody mentioned about doing outreach and the green laser pointer. I swear people are more excited about the laser pointer when they see the laser pointer. It's totally true. It happens to me as well. I was giving a talk. So I went on a 4-day bicycle tour in Zimbabwe, Botswana, and South Africa 2 years ago, and I gave a talk in a dry riverbed in the middle of the night in Zimbabwe during new moon, and the Milky Way was right above us, and it was just amazingly beautiful. And I was talking about some of the planets and some of the other stuff that was going on, and just like a lot of really cool universe stuff, just telling people about space and trying to get them excited. And the thing is, I got out my late green laser pointer, and I'm showing all these really cool images and these space facts that I think are really cool. And then people are just looking at the laser pointer like, whoa! And they came up and wanted to talk to me afterward about the laser pointer.
It reminds me of that joke. You can't point something out to a cat. They just look at your finger.
So humans are about the same. Oh, that's funny. Someone asked, Prepper State of Mind asks, do we watch Astro Backyard or Dylan O'Donnell? Oddly enough, Dylan O'Donnell's going to be on here with me maybe next week if the weather cooperates. Dylan and I have actually been friends for quite a while, since way back in the day of the beginning of these telescope hangouts on the internet. I've actually never met him in real life. But I want to drink beer with Dylan someday. But yeah, Dylan and I are good friends. I was chatting to him today. I chat with Trevor every once in a while. I watch both their channels. Dylan's actually on the team at photographingspace.com, he and I kind of, he was one of the first astrophotographers around the world to help me out with that. And if you want to learn how to take photos of space and with your camera, with through a telescope, without a telescope, all kinds of things, Milky Way photos, moon photos, planetary stuff. We've got all kinds of tutorials on the website at photographingspace.com. And Dylan has a ton of tutorials on there as well. And he's part of that team. Trevor, I've chatted with Trevor quite a bit as well, and he's keen to join this live stream here as well. So yeah, no, I definitely know both of those guys, and they're very good in this community. It's awesome to see all the passion in this. So it's funny, yeah. You know what people say? They always talk about, is your sky dark enough to see planets? Can you do this from the thing is that's the beauty of planets and the moon. You don't need dark skies to see them. You can do them in the middle of the city. I'm in the New York City of the whole continent of Africa, basically, in Johannesburg here. Like my skies are horribly bright. I can see a few stars, but that's it. So it's, yeah, definitely one of those things that's great.
So what do you think about getting over to Saturn?
It's going to happen now. It's time. We're going to move to Saturn now. So I actually need to unplug, let's see, the guide camera, because my guide camera just died on me. You know what we'll do? Okay, so we're going to move over to Saturn now. What else? We had one other. Was that it? Okay, yeah, that was. Yes. Okay, so I'm going to close this, unplug this, plug it back in.
It's kind of like when I sometimes I take pictures of the space station when it passes over my location, and when it's a nice high pass and it's pretty bright, and I use heavens above to tell me where it's going to be and what time.
Mm-hmm.
But it can get pretty bright, and and I'll go out. So I'm shooting with a 600 millimeter lens.
Yeah.
On a D810. So I'll go out there and I'm doing it handheld, but the space station can get so bright that you don't need to have crazy, you don't need to have long exposure. You can actually have a pretty quick shot, quick shutter speed, 1/500. It doesn't have to be high ISO.
Mm-hmm.
You can do it handheld.
Yeah.
And then because it's a high megapixel camera, you can still zoom in there and get some detail on the solar arrays and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So people are usually really surprised that you can get that with a handheld shot, but it's completely possible.
Oh, definitely, yeah. So I'm going to, you can see I'm actually going to, so I look through a sight on the scope, on this massive scope, and I'm going to move over to Saturn now. And then we're going to see on the screen, we're going to see Saturn pop up into that view, so that we can get it in there. And it's luckily not too far away. Where is it? There we go. Ah, nice. Okay, so that bright dot on the screen now is Saturn. Even on this tiny camera, this overexposed view with this camera, you can see that oblong shape with the rings. So.
Oh, wow, look at that.
Oh, this is nothing. Wait a minute. we'll get.
Yeah, but it's spooky when it's dark. Oh, look at that. That's fantastic.
There we go. Okay, now get that in the center. Which way do we want to go? Oh, it's looking good too.
That's really good seeing there.
We're gonna see the Cassini division. We're gonna see the shadow on the rings in real time. If I can get this thing to come back. There we go. Okay. Let's go this way. Struggling with backlash on my telescope right now. There we go. Okay. Now I will make a box there. Let's really zoom in on that puppy. Okay. So there we go. We've got Saturn. And I'm going to make it a little brighter, but I'm also going to turn up the gamma on this because Saturn just looks super nice with a bit of a gamma boost. So we can talk about some of these features. I'm going to refocus a bit because I think, yeah, we can get it a little tighter. I mean, that's cool, huh?
That's very cool. So yeah, we're looking out almost a billion miles.
A billion, yeah. Jeez.
So, you know, little upwards of 900 some odd thousand miles out there, and this light time is like what, about 82 minutes.
Yeah, it's a little, yeah, it's just under an hour and a half, from what I remember. I'm not going to state any exact numbers though. Okay, that's changed. So anyway, okay, now that I've got this all set up again to see Saturn, so we can use the mouse pointer and I can point around. So this gap in between the rings here is called the Cassini division, and Jason will be able to talk more about the Cassini division and, you know, what that means and everything. But from what I know is there's two main ring systems around Saturn, the A and the B rings, basically, right? Which is the A and which is the B?
The A is outward.
Okay.
So the edge of the A goes to the edge of the what you see there as far as the visible rings.
Okay. And notice the A ring is dimmer than the B, the inside ring. And you know, I say ring, but the thing is, there's how many? I mean, it's thousands of, right, of lines of ice crystals, basically.
Right. Yeah. So it's not even lines so much. They're individual pieces of ice.
Yeah.
You know, just organized into these bands that are grouped into you know, major groupings around the planet.
Mm-hmm.
But if you were to get down to quote unquote ground level with Saturn's rings, you'd see that it's all individual pieces orbiting, and the rings and the individual pieces are all orbiting, so they're all traveling at orbital velocity around Saturn. But it's down to, you know, they're as large as house sized, and down to like smoke particles.
Wow. Really?
Oh,
my goodness.
Yeah, they get very, very fine, especially in the outer rings like the F ring and the E ring and stuff like that. Now you can't see that. You can't see those from here. Those are outside of the main ring system. The main rings consist of the going from out. Well, I'll do going from inside closer to Saturn to out. You have the D ring, the C ring, the B ring, and the A ring.
Okay. Wow.
And the Cassini division divides the B ring from the A ring.
Okay. Yeah. So that's what we're seeing there is that division, and one of the cool things about the Cassini division is it's often used as a as an example of how, you know, how good your seeing is on a particular night, whether it be through the eyepiece or through a camera. Is if you can see the Cassini division you know, like this, like we can now, that means that we're actually, um, you know, we've got pretty good atmospheric conditions. We can see that in real time without having to stack video frames and that kind of thing. The other thing that I love about this is, I mean, this shadow, this little bit of shadow, because it's not at opposition yet. You know, right there, it's like up here, you see that it's almost a phased look, not quite phased, but just a little bit. You know, it's dimmer on this side of the planet, and you can see the shadow on the ring. So we're actually seeing the shadow of the body of the planet Saturn on the ring. You know, like that just the fact that we're seeing that just blows my mind a little bit. I don't know. I'm doing a image capture of this just so we have something to show for later, because it does look nice. But the thing is, Saturn's going to get bigger and brighter in the camera until July, mid-July, when it actually
we're at opposition with Saturn.
Yeah, exactly. So I did the bad thing here. I used gamma when I shouldn't have. There we go. So yeah, when it's at opposition, it's going to be directly opposite us from the sun. So the shadow is going to get smaller and smaller until it's pretty much non-existent. And then Saturn is going to be extra bright. And the thing is, at opposition, there's a period of time, it's only a day or two, I think, if I remember right, but it's not very long, where that A ring and the B ring are actually pretty much the same brightness, because they're so face on with the sun in comparison to like what
you end up getting that opposition surge effect.
Yeah, it's really cool. What does it say? Is Saturn really tilted orthogonally right now from our perspective? No, the camera. Well, I don't know. It depends on your perspective if you tilt your head, but the way the camera is right now.
But where's Saturn in the sky for you too?
Actually, I think it is. It is tilted that way because for me, Saturn is directly in the east, and I think up is up. So I you know what? I really don't know. I would have to find that out. I'm not even going to try and guess because I don't want to be wrong.
And obviously, we're looking at Saturn at an angle.
Yeah. Anyway,
so Saturn is tipped to us and the sun at a pretty strong angle, and that's because it's getting to northern summer.
Yeah. So like I mean,
on Saturn.
And I can rotate the camera on the telescope as you know, much as I want. So let's see. So let's see, what else can we... Oh, so one of the things about the rings of Saturn that blew my mind, and I know I spoke to you about this a while back, if you remember, it was the moon Anthe.
Anthe, yeah.
What was recently discovered inside the ring systems, right?
Anthe has its own arc.
So it's within the ring systems. It has like is it inside the ring system or is it outside? How does that? Because there was something about that moon in specific that it's not even a really good looking moon. It's just like this little tiny piece of stuff. But
right. So but it has its own. Hold on, I'm checking to see where the Anthe moon is orbiting. Because it does have its own ring arc.
Okay.
So it orbits between Mimas and Enceladus.
Okay.
And it shares its area with two other small moons, but it happens to have an arc section. So you can say it's within the rings because it's inside where Enceladus is, and Enceladus orbits within its own ring system called the E ring, which is basically a bunch of icy material that's been fired out of the southern jets of Enceladus. So there's, Saturn's rings extend much further than what we can see here in the telescope.
Yeah.
It goes into, there's an F ring you can't see there outside the A ring. Then there's a G ring, and then there's the E ring, and then there's a really, really diffuse stuff. So Anthe orbits, but it also has an arc, a ring arc with it. And that may be from material that's either ejected from Anthe and orbits Saturn with it, or maybe some material that it's kind of like scooped up from Enceladus.
Oh, that's insane.
Yeah, I mean it's a real dance of moons and icy particles and orbital resonances between moons. It's fascinating, really fascinating stuff. And if you want to be, I mean, there's some moons that are tucked inside the rings. They orbit in gaps. There's even these tiny little, 1 kilometer wide moonlets that are embedded inside the rings themselves, and they create bright features. They call them propellers. Again, this is all stuff you can't see from
Yeah.
here from Earth,
Yeah.
but Cassini was able to see all that stuff from orbit.
Wow, that's insane. That's so cool. I was running into capture problems here. I need to figure out what the hell.
And obviously, the Cassini division is named after Giovanni Cassini, the astronomer, and that's what the spacecraft was named after as well.
Okay.
So you have all this, Cassini is very much associated with Saturn.
Right. Yeah. And so, like, how many different Cassini missions were there?
Well, there's just the one. There's just the one, but it lasted. Cassini was in orbit at Saturn for over 13 years.
Oh wow! I didn't realize.
So
it was
doing a lot of research, and that's because the spacecraft was doing well. It was planned very well. It withstood everything that they threw at it and more. So it was able to get extended missions every time it came up. It's like, hey, the main mission ended. What do we do now? Well, we're in good shape. We've got plenty of fuel left. Let's go into an extended mission. So they planned that. And then that was over. And they said, okay, we're good. Let's keep going. What do we do? Another extended mission. Wow. So it was in orbit at Saturn from 2004 all the way to 2017.
So was Cassini the probe that they actually crashed into the body of
Titan?
The planet? Into Titan?
It was Titan, yeah. So Cassini brought with it a probe that was made by ESA. So Cassini was primarily a NASA mission, but it carried ESA's Huygens probe. And in January of 2005, it fired that probe that basically descended through Saturn's atmosphere, landed on the surface, and operated for a couple hours, taking measurements of Titan's atmosphere, and it took a picture from the surface. It didn't have the ability to move around, but it gave us a picture of the surface of Titan.
That's insane. Yeah, I mean, we talked about that earlier.
Totally fantastic.
Yeah. But so we've actually landed on. Is that the only moon other than our own in the solar system that we've landed on? I mean, moon-wise.
I think it is.
Yeah.
I think it is, yeah.
And they've made movies about Titan, because don't they say that like Titan could be, a possible, like, oh, maybe we can, screw it up so that humans can live there or something like that.
Well, it has a hydrologic cycle, except that it's so cold out there. You're talking 300 degrees below. It's so cold out there that the hydrologic cycle isn't water. It's all liquid methane and ethane.
Oh my goodness.
And it has, Titan has a decent gravity, surface gravity. Titan has a atmospheric pressure because it has a considerable atmosphere. In fact, the atmospheric pressure is pretty much like what we have here, with a lower gravity. So it's something that we're humans to visit Titan. If they were able to, if they had a way to keep warm and stuff, they could actually withstand the surface pressure, without a suit. Unfortunately, it's very cold and you can't breathe, and there's no breathable oxygen. But as far as surface pressure goes, that's not a problem.
So you're saying we should probably take care of this planet because it's the only one that we can live on?
That would be a good idea.
Speaking of Earth Day, was just a couple days ago, so yeah.
Happy Earth Day.
Yeah. So this is was it yesterday? Yesterday, I think it was Earth Day. Yeah. So like, I suppose this is the official Earth Day live stream, just a day late. So I'm gonna do another capture here, but so like how many? So Jupiter has 4 main moons, but I've never really thought about, because we don't really talk about, other than say Titan, and basically Titan is the big one, right? With the moons of Saturn. But how many like main moons are there of Saturn? I mean, there's the four Galilean moons of Jupiter, but what about Saturn?
Well, Saturn has its largest moon, Titan, which we were just talking about, and it's the second largest moon in the solar system. So Jupiter has Ganymede, and then Saturn has Titan, and then it really drops dramatically. The next largest moon down from Titan is Rhea,
Mm,
but Rhea is considerably smaller than Titan. And then you end up, all of these moons are pretty much heavily cratered, primarily water ice, a little bit of rock composition.
okay.
And you kind of have to you have to get used to imaging them to discern some of them from the others, because they all look pretty much the same. Lots and lots of craters, not a lot of color, and mostly ice. So that after Titan you have Rhea, and then you have Dione, and then you have Tethys.
Dione, is that how you pronounce it?
Dione, yeah,
Aha!
Dione, and
I
then
always say Dione.
Tethys. And yeah, well, it's you look at it and you go, well, yeah,
Dione, I like that better anyway, because Dione just
Dione.
seems like, I don't know, wrong, but yeah,
And
because it
these
is
are
wrong.
they're all named after Greek and Roman gods
Yeah,
and characters and stuff like that.
sure.
So you gotta kind of look to the pronunciation from that level. But yeah, Rhea, Dione, and Tethys are your next little bunch of moons,
Tethys.
and then you start dropping down into Iapetus. Iapetus is interesting because it's got two different colorations. One side dark, one side light,
You're starting to blow
and
my mind here with the pronunciations, because now I'm like, for the first time, I've actually like paid attention to the pronunciation. Like
yeah,
I've said them. I've always said like, what, I don't know. So it's, how do you say Tethys? Tethys?
Tethys,
Tethys. Okay, Tethys, and then Dione, and well, Enceladus. That one's not too bad. Mimas,
Mimas. Yeah. Now
Rhea.
Mimas is the one that looks like the Death Star.
Okay, yeah, that one's so cool.
That's
You guys
and
got
Mimas
it.
is actually pretty small. It's only about 250 miles wide.
Well, the Death
So
Star. I mean,
at
if you're
that
gonna build the Death Star, it can't be that big,
yeah, it's still bigger than a Death Star though.
Somebody asked about seeing the moons, and I have to overexpose the image, but yes, we can see moons, and we will. I'm gonna do that right now because it's just cool to see. Because there's a lot of them right around Saturn right now. I'm gonna look at these. Look at the comments here. Somebody asked what mount and scope this is. This is a 12-inch Ritchie-Chrétien scope. It's at f8. Um, and it's just a Celestron C-Gem mount. So it's actually quite a big scope, quite a heavy-duty mount, very heavy-duty. But yeah, it's not something that I like to carry around a lot. So I leave it set up in my backyard for long periods of time and just cover it up with a tarp when it rains. Um, so it's almost like having an observatory without leaving the computers and stuff connected. And I bring the scope inside. So someone asked, have you had a chance to check out any of Saturn's moons yet? They're going to be dots, but we're going to look at them just now so we can see. Yeah, okay, so let me expose this. This is when.
And again, you gotta remember too, you're looking twice as far out with Saturn as you were with Jupiter. So
Yeah.
even though the moons are visible, that's a lot of angular resolution you're trying to squeeze out there.
Oh, come on. Yeah. They're so dim right now. This is just crazy. Let me zoom out a little bit. See what we can see. It's tough to see because I've got to expose the crap out of that. Let's do this rather. What was it, 5? There we go. This looks better.
Oh, there you go.
Okay, so let me.
Now, do you have the ephemeris for that?
Yeah.
I can look it up on Twitter too.
Yeah, I've got it here. Okay, so I'm actually gonna try and crop in a little bit so we can see just those moons. Looks like we're gonna see. Okay, so we've got 3 moons that are popping up in the view now. Those moons are. I just had it on my screen. There we go. Okay, those are Mimas, Tethys, and how do you say it? Rhea? Rhea? Rhea?
Raya, yeah.
Rhea. Okay, so that's Mimas, Tethys, and Rhea right there from the bottom to the top. And Dione, actually no, that's Dione. That's Dione on the right where my mouse pointer is right now.
I was going to say, Mimas seems like it would be pretty small and difficult to.
It is. Mimas is kind of hidden here somewhere in the ring, so we're not going to be able to see it. It's too small. So yeah, sorry, that's Dione,
Cool.
Tethys, and Rhea. Oh, and then we've got another one down here. This is Enceladus right here. It's really hard to see. Let me try and jack up the. There we go. Now we can see it a little better.
Oh, okay. Okay. Wow.
So there's Enceladus right there. So yeah, I mean the moons of Saturn are much more difficult to deal with, but they are doable.
But again, you know you got to remember too, these moons are so icy that they reflect a lot of light. So that's what makes them great, especially Enceladus. Enceladus is basically like a little mirror.
It's funny because it's the dimmest moon in the view here. It looks like Rhea is the star of the show.
Well, Enceladus is much smaller.
Okay. So it's
Enceladus is only about 300 miles wide. Okay. So it's about as big as I've heard it compared to the width of the state of Arizona.
Oh wow. Okay, so it's tiny. Jeez, man. So that's Arizona right there. Wow. Yep. And how far away was that? 1 billion miles away?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so what we're seeing here, we were talking about, the whole speed of light thing and the telescope time machine and all that kind of stuff. I mean, what we're seeing here is over an hour ago. Like, we're not seeing this as it is now. These moons, as we're seeing right now, that's not where they are. So, like, if you were in a space battle and you wanted to, like, blow up, one of the moons or whatever, and you aim at them, you're going to miss by, like, thousands of kilometers, because these moons are not in these positions right now. They are in their orbits. They're an hour further along in the orbits around Saturn. So, I mean, that's just the crazy thing, and it'd be interesting to, I suppose, do a little experiment sometime to say, like, okay, where are they? Where are they in reality? Like, where are they? What we can see through the telescope, but actually, D&E is over here, but it's like, oh no, it doesn't matter. It's where we can see it. So that's just that just blows my mind. That's cool. All right, I'm gonna readjust the exposure so we can see Saturn again, because I want to see the rings. I like the rings. So there's the moons, and let's get this back. Adjust the gamma. Put this back in. Okay, so there's our beautiful ringed planet. Once again. And it's funny, I'm actually out of hard drive space. We've captured about 100.
You filled it up, huh?
Yeah, we've captured about 130 gigabytes, 140 gigabytes of stuff tonight. So, oh, somebody said I could be able to see Titan. Where's Titan? There's Hyperion. Oh, Titan's way out there. Yeah, let's do it. Why not? Because Titan's cool. We need to see Titan. There's that. Let's increase it. And it's going to be up. Okay, so let's move it down. Titan should be, there's Titan. Yo, Titan's bright. Check that out.
Oh, wow.
Okay, so that was my mouse pointer. But Titan is right here. So, you know, if we wanted to be really cold and could breathe like methane and a bunch of other gases and stuff, then, you know, we could maybe hang out there. So that's Titan here, Rhea, Tethys, and Dione, and then Enceladus there.
And Enceladus is, as we speak, spraying out parts of its subsurface ocean into space around Saturn, forming its
Oh,
own
that's
hazy
right.
ring.
Yeah, that thing like spews crap out all the time. It's got
Yep.
how
Yep.
tall are those geysers of stuff?
Well, they spray right into orbit. So
That's insane.
so yeah, they spray out 100 kilometers up, from the surface. But some of that material falls down, but a lot of it escapes velocity. Escapes Enceladus's. It surpasses Enceladus's escape velocity and ends up creating this thick, I should say, a diffuse but very thick ring called the E ring. And you can't see that here, but again, Cassini was able to discern that.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
I think
that liquid, that icy vapor, comes from Enceladus's underground ocean, and it has the same salinity the Cassini mission found as it flew through the plumes. It has the same salinity level as Earth's oceans.
Oh wow, really? Okay.
And it contains salts. It contains organic compounds. They know that there's a heat source under there. Otherwise there wouldn't be the jets at all to begin with. So it has everything required to potentially develop life as far as we know how things work here on Earth.
Mm-hmm.
So that puts Enceladus on the short list of places to look in the solar system
for life.
Yeah. For life, yeah.
So this is on there now. This is your image using what? This was from data from NASA and JPL, I believe. You can talk about this image.
Hold on, I gotta switch over to see what you're showing. Okay, yeah.
Enceladus plumes. These are the actual plumes on Enceladus.
Yeah, so this is a. I gave a little tint of color to this, but it's basically a monochrome image that was captured by Cassini, the spacecraft, as it passed by Enceladus. And now these plumes are coming from long fissures, these long chasms that crisscross around on Enceladus's south pole, and they call them tiger stripes because of their shapes and what they look like. But these jets, these bright spots, are that icy material that's getting backlit by the sun.
Okay, that's just that's nuts. Let's look at some of the other images on your Flickr album.
Now see in this image you have up on the screen here. See how there's like some diagonal or horizontal shadowing that's cutting through?
Yeah. Is that the shadow?
That's the shadow of Enceladus itself.
Oh, I was gonna guess that. That's amazing. So
that's Enceladus's shadow cutting through the plumes.
Wow.
So you get a sense of kind of like three dimensionality of what's happening there on the surface. You have a backlit moon that's spraying up this material, and the moon's shadow actually cuts into the plumes themselves.
Okay. So some of these other images, this is also Enceladus. There we go. I love, since we're talking about Enceladus. Here's another one of those Enceladus plumes, just how big they are spraying into, crazy. Some of the other moons, this one's pretty cool.
I've got a few Saturn moon shots on there, and I'm pretty sure I have Dione and Tethys and Rhea. Yeah,
this one's beautiful. That's up now. It's kind of a close-up, not a close-up, but it's got the rings and Mimas with the planet body, all in there, and it just shows like just how cool that looks. That's just beautiful. So these are images. These are all this is made from real data,
Yeah.
from space probes. Um, it's similarly processed to the way I process my planetary data, but it's just much closer up and using actual space probes, and the cameras on those space probes. So this stuff that Jason does is incredible. Um, I'm scrolling through now. We were talking about the shadow. Um, the shadow on the rings. This is a really cool example of the shadow, and one of the images that's just beautiful that shows that dense shadow,
Hmm.
right on the rings.
And you can see here, like, the Cassini division is is what separates the A ring from the B ring on the inside. But you can see how much there's rings inside the
Yeah,
division.
it's not that much of a division really at all. It's just less
Right.
dense. Yeah,
It's just less dense, and there's stuff in there. So
yeah,
some of the rings are denser, some of the rings are more reflective, but overall, they're only on average, uh, you know, tens of meters thick.
oh wow, that's it. You're,
Yeah.
you're kidding.
You know, you
Ah,
get right on if you get right on edge with them, the rings almost disappear for a moment.
oh wow, that's amazing. And they look so solid from this side. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me look. Uh, we need to look at the Death Star moon. There we go. I want to look at Mimas because we have to. So this is Mimas. This is that moon that we just looked at within the rings, and this is Jason's image of it, made from data from, um, I believe this is the Cassini stuff still. So
Right. Right.
yeah, like, I mean, you can see right there, obviously the jokes are gonna, get thrown out that that's no moon. Well, the thing is, it is a
Right.
moon, and
I actually got that. I actually got a "That's No Moon" joke on this, retweeted out by Mark Hamill.
I think that was recently, wasn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
It was last month.
yeah, that's funny.
So Mimas is again only about, 250 miles wide, but it's the you can see here it's just about round.
Yeah,
Okay, it's almost looks like it's, if you look at it, you're like, that's not a perfect circle, and it's not. Mimas is just about the limit of an ice and rock world can be in its size and keep a round shape.
okay. Oh, that's cool. That's very cool.
And Herschel crater is enormous. If Earth had a crater the size of Herschel, okay, to scale,
Yeah.
it would be bigger than Canada.
So I just went back to the Saturn so we can make sure we show the actual telescope view now. But
Sure.
so you were talking about Herschel crater. That's the crater that is the weapon of the Death Star, basically.
Yep. Yeah. The
Wow.
super laser, Mimas's super laser cannon is Herschel crater.
It's the planet killer. It's a Star Killer base. It's bigger than the
Right.
Death Star, so it's more like Star Killer base.
More
Okay.
like Star Killer, right?
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. We've got to do Star Wars jokes. It's just kind of the rule, I guess.
We got a question here from Elizenda Diaz Balanza. Sorry if I hacked your name there, but I did my best.
Yeah. What
She
about the
asks,
hexagon pole? Yeah.
what about the what about the hexagon pole? Now Saturn has a really interesting jet stream pattern around its north pole, and it forms a hexagonal shape. And it's big enough where it's like 3 Earths wide from the tip of one hexagon edge to the other, and that's just a permanent structure that's formed by the eddies of the atmosphere, as Saturn spins. And they've recreated this here in a lab with different types of fluid dynamics and stuff. And they found that hexagonal shape is something that forms. In fact, there's a shot of it right there. So it's a really curiously geometric formation, and it's all created by patterns of jet stream and fluid dynamics, and how the eddies kind of like from lower altitudes, not altitudes, from lower latitudes, prevent it from forming into a perfect circle. So it's a really interesting formation of fluid dynamics. But that's what you have on a planet that is rotating quickly and is basically all atmosphere. There's nothing underneath. There's no landforms or anything to stop that. So you have a perfect example of fluid dynamics in play here.
Well, that's such a cool image. I mean, yeah, I still don't understand the physics behind that and why that really works, but like it's so interesting. And
And
some,
then in the middle, right over Saturn's north pole, you have this spinning vortex, or it's almost like a permanent hurricane,
I mean, that
and that's
must be,
that's that's the dark spot there.
yeah, that's so cool. And even with some of my images when I process them, even with this, humble setup, humble, um, in the backyard here, I've actually gotten almost the shape, not quite, because I haven't imaged enough to be able to see the entire pole yet, but I've almost been able to make out that shape. Um,
Huh.
at least,
Wow.
straight edges, pretty close, where it's like, okay, it's not quite round, one of those things where you're like, I can kind
Hmm.
of see a straight line where it should be, or it should be round, but it's not. So, um, I mean, you can actually see, if you look, if you really pay attention and try and look close, you can kind of see it's the darker coloration here, and there's like these bands of darker, and then there's that really bright, center band, that cloud band. Um, I don't know anything about that. Maybe you do, but yeah.
Well, those are. I mean, those are the. It's like what Jupiter has, except not as dramatic. You get these cloud bands, and those are going to change based on seasons
Mm,
and and what's going on in Saturn's atmosphere. So,
yeah.
um, and obviously, what's going on down lower is you have the shadow of the rings themselves.
Oh yeah, down here.
Yeah,
Is that the shadow of the ring, or is that the ring obscuring? No, it would be shadow of the ring because there wouldn't be obscuring light from the planet. That'd be silly.
right, right.
Yeah. So that's actually a shadow of these main ring systems on the planet body there. That's that's cool. So we get shadow of the planet on the rings, and then we get shadow of the rings on the planet, like
Yep.
live through the telescope right now. You
That's
know?
what's cool about Saturn and the telescope. There's so much more of a 3D physicality to it,
Yeah.
just because of all that light, all those lighting effects.
Yeah, so like of the people watching right now, what do we got? What do we got votes for, Saturn or Jupiter, which is better? Who wins in a knife fight? Um, if Dylan O'Donnell were here, he was joking. He was saying, Battle of the Planets, Jupiter wins. He's a solid contender for Jupiter, and I sent him a message in response, and said like, oh yeah, but Saturn's way more pretty and everything. He's like, yeah, whatever, knife fight to the death.
Yeah.
He's gonna, that's the hill he's gonna die on, is the one where Jupiter wins. But I don't know, man. I mean, Saturn is just this doesn't it doesn't look real. Like I'm gonna tap the telescope, okay, so we know that this is like an actual image, of coming from a camera, in my backyard, aimed at space. Like I can't get enough of this. I think I could just look at this thing in the telescope. I haven't even imaged. I've imaged like twice, but I've just been staring at this thing. I think that's what I remember back when I started doing a lot of this stuff. It was a lot of observation. I didn't even take pictures right away. Um, it was mostly just with my Dob and sitting in the backyard in the cold, not even noticing the cold. I mean, that was part of the thing that I remember about when I started doing any astronomy whatsoever. Was just waiting for these events to happen, sitting outside and not really feeling the fact that I couldn't feel my fingers anymore. But it didn't really matter because I'm staring at Jupiter or Saturn through this eyepiece and like, oh my god, oh, this is so cool. Waiting for a moon to show up, or trying to see the great red spot, and trying to see the Cassini division. Like there's just something about looking through a telescope that
This is the Saturn's looking real sharp.
yeah,
I
this is
mean,
nice, man.
yeah.
I'm,
I'm surprised at how clearly you're seeing the division there.
Yeah, I'm running out of hard drive space, but I'm shooting anyway until it's completely full because it looks nice. I should be able to get a decent black and white image out of this. I tend to I wasted all my color imaging on Jupiter.
It's not a waste. Come on.
No, it's not. Jupiter's
Don't
beautiful.
say it like that. Don't be like that.
No, because honestly I like the monochrome look with Saturn a lot. I think it really because it's like it's got a the yellowish and then there's a little bit of a red tint in some spots, but it's mostly just like a yellow thing anyway. So like if you kind of stick with the monochrome look, it's nice. It's nice and sharp. Uh, the image I posted today on Twitter from the last live stream was just from a capture like this. As we're watching, I quickly capture when it starts to look nice, and then you can usually get a pretty good image out of it. So this is almost done with that capture. What other? I'm trying to think if there's any other interesting stuff that you've done recently. I think you recently released an image of like a squashed moon, one of the pancake moons of Saturn or something. It's almost not even a
Well, I'll tell you,
moon.
there's no shortage of interesting moons around Saturn. They range from just typical cratered worlds to things that look like raviolis
Yeah,
to Titan with the moon with an atmosphere. I mean, this trying to think of what else is out. Enceladus, it's
a water moon.
water moon. I mean, it really has its own system.
Is there a forest moon Endor?
Yeah, I mean, right? Where's Endor? You gotta watch out for those Ewoks, though, man. They'll eat you. Yeah, and maybe I hope that someday we get another dedicated mission to Jupiter, like Galileo, or to maybe a Uranus or Neptune or something like that, because I think that there's a lot more to be discovered around all of these planets with a bunch of different types of moons.
Yeah.
I think the variety is there. We just haven't gotten close in enough to all of these different things,
Yeah.
to see it all. It's just there's so much variation out in the outer solar system.
Yeah. Somebody just asked which has more moons, Jupiter or Saturn. And before you answer, because I know you're going to know the answer, I don't know for sure. But what I am very disappointed in is that we recently found 10 more moons than Jupiter, like about a year and a half ago or so.
Right.
I was really annoyed because for the longest time Jupiter had 69 moons. And
right.
And then they're like, "Oh no, actually there's like 10 or 12 more now." And it's like, "Oh!"
Yeah.
Like just ruins
Actually, there's 79.
it just ruins
That's
it
not
now.
funny anymore.
No, it's not funny, we've got to have your jokes. But anyway, so like but Saturn, I mean, we keep finding these tiny moons, and
Right.
so how many? Which wins? Which planet wins in the battle of the moons?
Yeah, right. It's Saturn. Saturn has 82 moons now.
So it's a close race though.
It is a close race. Yeah,
Okay.
it is a close race.
But
And again, Saturn's kind of funny because it has all of these little embedded moonlets in its rings, and I'm not sure I don't think they counted those. So it's almost like, well, how small do you want to go?
Yeah.
Because Saturn has those too.
Does it have to be roundish to be a moon? Like
I'm not sure where they draw the line between moon and moonlet and a bit of stuff stuck in the rings.
Right. It's the whole the Pluto debate. Like, is it a planet or is it not? Is it a moon or is it not? Well, the one thing that we can all agree on is it's a thing that is orbiting our star,
another thing,
or another thing in our solar system. So whatever it is, it's a celestial body of stuff.
Right.
You can call it whatever you
again,
want.
I think, and I assume that the outer moons, or the ice planets of Neptune and Uranus will probably have a lot more moons than they think they do too, if they got a dedicated mission out there. And Voyager 2 spotted a lot of new moons out there when it passed by each of them. But I bet if they each had a dedicated mission, they would find even more.
Yeah, no, that'd be amazing. Uh, that'd be so cool to see. Is there anything? Do you know if there's anything um, planned as far as that's concerned, or is it?
The next, I remember, I want to say that there was something planned for. I want to say there was something planned for Triton. They wanted to. They were working on something with a Triton adventure.
Hmm.
But again, these are things that they plan, and then from there it takes 5, 6, 7, 10 years to build these things, and then you have to get the launch window,
Yeah.
and planets aren't all lined up to be able to launch out there. You can't just go to Neptune.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
that you have to have the right window to do that. And we were
Yeah.
lucky. If anybody's seen the film, the documentary, The Farthest, you realize how much of in a lucky position we were in
Okay.
the '70s to be able to actually do that.
Wow.
And that's what opened us up to be able to do all the other follow-up missions. But Voyager was really special in the fact that there was that launch window that could happen, that they could use the gravity assist to get out where they needed to get.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it wouldn't have been possible.
No, it's just it's insane. Yeah. To know that we've actually exited our solar system now. We've
Mm.
got space junk outside of our own solar system, and like it took how many decades to get there.
Right, right. And even then, it's been traveling at these insane velocities
Hmm.
since the late '70s, and it's still only measured in light hours.
Yeah, yeah, it's just crazy.
We talk about light years like they're nothing in science fiction, but forget about it.
Yeah,
There's
yeah,
traveling at light year distances is really outside of anything that we currently could do with any type of technology we have now.
yeah. No, and it's crazy because everybody. I'm surprised no one here has asked this. It's because I usually get that alien question, on these, and the
Well, we're the aliens.
yeah, like are there have aliens visited us? Have you ever seen a UFO? That kind of thing. It's like, well, no, because
Yeah.
we can again talk about the speed of light and the size of the universe, and like this is all this stuff that we're showing you is in our own solar system, which is relatively close by. But the thing is,
It,
it's flipping
everything that
far.
you can see, yeah, everything that you're seeing as far as all the planets go, out until Neptune would be easily lost in the glare of our star if we were looking at it from another star.
Yeah, and the closest star, is what Proxima Centauri or whatever, which is
Yeah,
like what 4.2 light years away. Well, yeah, 4.2 light years away. What you're looking at right now is 1.3 light hours
light
away.
hours, right,
So like,
right.
think and that's the closest star of, hundreds of billions in our galaxy, which is one of hundreds of billions of other galaxies. So is there life out there? Yeah, I mean, probably. I don't want to assume that we're the only life that's ever evolved on any planet in the universe, but like,
No, no.
are we ever gonna like see it or whatever? No, it's like unless we figure out some sort of jump engine technology,
Yeah,
that
something entirely different.
that.
Renee's got a question on filters.
Oh, okay, cool. Um, let's see. Would you get anything using on the rings? I don't know. I don't know if you'd see oxygen. So oxygen, I believe the O2 is in the visible spectrum, so there probably wouldn't be anything different. Um, HA and S2. S2's also in the visible, so you probably wouldn't see anything different. But HA on the rings, do you know if is there any benefit to looking at a very narrow, what is it, 540 nanometer frequency on the rings? I know we've looked at Saturn in UV, and I mean infrared. I could look at it in infrared right now, actually. Why not? I'm out of hard drive space, so I'm going to do it.
I mean, Saturn itself in infrared has value because it's picking up heat signatures from inside the planet. Saturn in ultraviolet has value because you're looking through the atmosphere. As far as the rings go, not really.
Okay, I switched to my infrared filter, actually. I'm just going to get focus here so we can look at Saturn in infrared right now. Once I get focused. And drop the gain down a little bit. Eee. Usually infrared is nice because it cuts through a lot of the atmospheric problems. So let's see how I can. So we were talking about filters and the parafocal focus and all of that earlier. This is Saturn in the infrared light spectrum right now. I'm trying to dial this in. So my infrared filter actually has a little bit different focus point than all the other ones. So I kind of have to use it by itself. Wow, it's really bad. But anyway, that's Saturn in infrared. So what's different about that? What do we get here that we don't in the visible light spectrum? I'm not quite sure. Other than,
I mean, it looks like there might be a little bit of extra definition on the Cassini division, especially like right in front of Saturn. But that's about it.
Yeah. Well, you said earlier that there was value in infrared on Saturn.
Well, because sometimes the spacecraft, sometimes Cassini would image Saturn in infrared, and I've seen other like Hubble observations in infrared on Saturn.
Okay.
And they're pulling heat signatures from inside the atmosphere.
Oh, okay. So this is probably closer. This isn't the heat infrared. This is This is the near IR.
Near infrared.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is 742 nanometers.
That's just outside.
Yeah, just outside. Yeah. So this isn't the heat. That would probably take special instruments that I do not have access to. I'd really like to get a UV filter actually, because UV is awesome. And then you can also, if I had a UV filter, I could look at the cloud detail on Venus, which would be cool.
Right.
So yeah, this is Saturn in infrared through the telescope. It's actually, yeah, it's not as nice as it looked with the other color filters, I don't think. But no, anyway, I've had you for way too long now, so I'm gonna let you go. It's been 3 hours.
All right.
Thanks so much, man.
Thanks for inviting me, Corey.
And thanks everybody for watching. Feel free to please reshare the tweets and the Instagram stuff that Jason and I have put out there, because people can rewatch this and scroll through boring parts if they want to, and just see these kind of views from the telescope in the backyard. But if anybody has any questions about anything you've seen, either put it in the comments or or rather, even better yet, just hit us up on Twitter or whatever, and we can easily answer whatever questions. I will be processing the data that I've captured tonight, and I'll post anything that looks good as soon as I have a chance to, hopefully over the weekend or in the next day or so. And
I can't wait to see the color images.
Yeah, no, the Jupiter stuff, it's so frustrating with Jupiter, because like I always want to get those little cloud details, and it's very difficult to get that to really stand out. So I usually like Saturn better just because it's easier. You don't try and get the detail because there isn't a lot of detail there to get from my standpoint. But anyway, thank you very much, Jason, for joining me, and
sure thing.
Thanks everyone for watching.
I'll see you around on Twitter.
All right, cool. Cheers.
Take care.